Hello, the time is now 7 o'clock. Calling the March 7th meeting, 2022, the regular public meeting to order of the Ridgewood Board of Education. Could I have a roll call, please?
Yes. Ms. Brogan. Mr. Mahmood. Here. Mr. Donning.
Here.
Mr. Lumbo.
Here.
Ms. Quack.
Here. The Ridgewood Board of Education has been meeting in executive session pursuant to NJSA 10:4-12. The minutes of this meeting will be released when the need for confidentiality no longer exists. For today's meeting pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act, advance notice of this evening's meeting has been given to the Ridgewood News, the Record, and the clerk of the Village of Ridgewood. In addition, notices have been posted in the office of the board secretary and in all school buildings. Can we stand up for the flag salute, please, and pledge of allegiance? Yes.
All right, so we have some retirees tonight. We're going to ask George Washington to come on up here. Dr. Kay, are you around? There you go. And we're going to ask Mr. Groh come on up with her, please. Join
Not
her.
the original George Washington.
Okay. Today has been an emotional day. I know I shouldn't talk about it, but it was very, it was such a surreal. There are kids whose faces I she saw my face for the first time. So it's been an emotional day. Lori has been right. Believe it, the 90s, that was 28 years ago. Teaching grades 6, 7, and 8 now. What many people don't realize about our music. Well, Lori just had to imagine. She lived it, and not only that, but she got the students together and to continue to learn and grow. It's pretty amazing. She was telling me that earlier today, for her, it was so strange. She was able to hear them sing at such a higher volume and more clearly, because many of them didn't have masks on. And that's not to take any respect away from the students who wear masks, but it's pretty miraculous. So in addition to her regular vocal music classes, Lori has also been very active in helping out as the director of our GW talent shows. She coordinated student performances, accompanied on the piano as needed, and even choreographed the faculty finale numbers, which I'm laughing because if you saw the GW teachers dancing on stage, it's laughable. And I should add that teaching teachers can be way more challenging than teaching students, especially when it involves singing and dancing. Lori has also been the musical director and sometime choreographer for 27, I think it is, GW musical and theater productions. She's planned and coordinated the 8th grade trip to the Metropolitan Opera for as long as that program was running. And I got to experience my first opera thanks to Lori. And she directed the GW show and jazz choir also for 28 years. Her students have performed at various festivals around New Jersey and New York City, and they have scored superior ratings. In addition, they have performed for the board at RHS coffee houses, at Downtown for the Holidays, at various Bergen County malls, and also for Ridgewood seniors throughout the years. It should be noted that some of Lori's former students have gone on to perform on Broadway, on television, or pursued careers as vocal teachers or vocal coaches. Lori has certainly made a difference in the lives of many, including her colleagues at GW. Her positive attitude, her strength, her can-do spirit, and her talent have helped make GW the amazing school it is today. Lori, you will be missed.
We can see the smile from you right now. It's incredible, you know. So it's congratulations. Thank you for all your years of service.
Thank you. Thank you. I really,
No, sit down. You have to talk into the mic. I'm sorry.
Sorry. It's exciting to go to the next step of this journey, but very bittersweet because I've
Absolutely.
been in Ridgewood for so long and I've just loved being a part of this community. So thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, next we're going to move Dr. Semendinger. Come on up for Hawes with Ms. Spino. And we made a correction.
The hardest part is always saying goodbye. I knew this day was coming for a long time because Ms. Spino and I have had many long discussions, and I knew her retirement was on the horizon. But still, when I read her official letter, it hit home and brought sadness. There are good people and good teachers, and then there are great teachers and great people, and then there's Mrs. Spino. Special, kind, compassionate, caring. A number of years ago, a dad from Somerville approached me at a dad's night practice. He had become successful in life, but when he was a kid, he struggled in school. He told me that Mrs. Spino made all the difference in his life, and she did that a lot. As COVID raged and schools changed, Mrs. Spino, as many probably have, considered retirement, and we discussed this, and she said, well, there are some fifth graders that I have to see through to middle school. They especially need me. I can't leave them. And she didn't. Mrs. Spino is a teacher who puts the needs of her students above her own, and she always has. There's another child, at least one that I know of, in college right now studying to be a teacher. He's working to be a teacher in part because of the tremendous impact Mrs. Spino had on his life. And it's like that a lot. There have been countless students who I've observed in Mrs. Spino's classroom who thrived with her. These children sometimes only found success in their school day when they were there with Mrs. Spino, and they treasured the time, and they still do, that they spent with her. When I would stop into the classroom, they would delight in showing me the great work they did, and they would also tell stories, so many stories, of the special and the close relationships they have with Mrs. Spino. A great teacher teaches more than a curriculum. A great teacher teaches kindness and compassion and love, and a great teacher knows her students, each as unique and special human beings. Mrs. Spino always knew her students as unique people. Yes, she helped her students understand how to read and write and do math, but she also taught them how to think, and she made them smile. Since she lives in the neighborhood, the children sometimes stop by her house because they love her. Teachers seek to make an impact on the lives of their students, and Mrs. Spino did that and so much more for decades. And I just learned for decades, like 50. Mrs. Spino, 50 years ago, graduated from Ridgewood High School. This is a graduate who loves the village of Ridgewood so much that she came back to give in full and then more. To see the smiles of joy from achievement on the faces of the students and the recognition that these children were valued, that's what makes it. It has never been difficult to see Mrs. Spino's positive impact on others. There was a sad period in the history of Hawes many years ago. In a matter of just a few years, 2 students and a teacher passed away. It was a sad time, but the love and the kindness, that caring community that Oz is, shone through for the families, for the students, and for the teachers. But I especially remember one long night. I sent a message to the community that I'd be at Oz in case anyone needed to talk. I'd make myself available to be with families, parents, kids. And I talked to them about what was taking place, to reassure them, to counsel them, maybe even to cry together. And as I sat at Oz meeting some people and offering whatever support I could, there was a period where I was alone. And in came Mrs. Spino. I asked if she was all right. She assured me she was. And then she said, "How are you? I came by to make sure that you're okay." People don't come by to make sure that you're okay. Except grateful, Mrs. Spino. When people care, it's obvious. It's apparent. It shows. In a sad and difficult time, Mrs. Spino's heart called out and shined brightly. Most people don't do things like that, but Mrs. Spino did. I already knew by then, but then again, I saw firsthand what the children see in this kind, loving, caring, and very special teacher. This is who Mrs. Spino is. She gives of herself for others. And I got to be honest, it's just not going to be the same without her. Congratulations, Mrs. Spino, on a well-deserved retirement. You deserve the best always and forever. We're going to miss you.
Thank you to the Village of Ridgewood, not only for my education, but for the years that I've been able to come back, as I said, home and teach. I've had a long career, and I'm happy that I was able to end it here in town. So, thank you.
You're a special part of that history, and now that you're retiring, we'll have to get you a part of the Alumni Association. So, that's very special. 50 years is incredible. So, thank you. Thank you. We're going to jump up to the high school level, Miss Ames and Mr. Pizzuto.
So Linda Ames is retiring after 17 years of service to the Ridgewood Public Schools. Starting her career with us at the high school library, Ms. Ames was an important part of that library team. They were like a family, and unfortunately, with the major budget cuts of 2009 led to a reorganization of district's administrative assistants, Ms. Ames has moved to Travell Elementary School for a short time. Ms. Ames was then challenged to split her time in two completely different environments. In 2010, Ms. Ames supported the child study team at Orchard School on a part-time basis. She would then come to the high school and work with a high school population in the area of attendance. Her ability to switch gears on a daily basis between working with and around grade school children and then confronting high school teenagers over their absences showed Ms. Ames' flexibility and her dedication. For the past 8 years, Ms. Ames has been an important part of our high school main office staff in the area of attendance. I don't know how we are going to find someone who has the unique ability to identify suspicious attendance. Is ready and willing to confront the students of their
Public Schools. Ms. Mead started in Ridgewood as a substitute aide. She then served as an instructional aide at Benjamin Franklin Middle School. From 2003 to 2010, she was the Ridge School Library Secretary. From 2010 to the present, Ms. Mead has been the Child Study Team and Main Office Secretary at Travell. Now, the day of a main office secretary is incredibly busy. There are phone calls, notes from home, ringing doorbells, deliveries, Band-Aids, bloody noses, children on crutches, children in boots, children in wheelchairs. There are family members dropping off forgotten homework, forgotten lunches, forgotten snacks, forgotten sneakers for PE, forgotten instruments for music, and forgotten eyeglasses. It's a lot of forgetfulness at the elementary level. It's a veritable maelstrom of activity. And often the people who come to the main office secretary are a little bit confused, and sometimes they're even a little bit upset. Now picture Mrs. Mead at the center of all of this activity. Her smile, her laughter, her easygoing, friendly nature, her sense of humor, which is sometimes wicked. Rose is the calm at the center of our storm. She knows just what you're looking for or who to speak to help you get it. She has an incredible can-do attitude and a true connection with people. And it's fitting that so many people come to Rose about all of those forgotten items because Rose does not forget. She is and has been Travell's memory. She remembers everyone, every teacher, every teaching assistant, every parent, every student who graduated a decade ago. She's the person you go to when you want to know the whole story. She's the person when you want to know the reason why something happened. And ultimately, she's the person you go to even when you don't need something. She's the person you go to just because you want to stop and talk for a moment, because you know Rose has something uplifting to share. She's a genuinely good person, a people person in every sense. If you want to see Rose light up, listen to her speak about her family. They're all here tonight, right behind us. Ask her about her children, her grandchildren, her husband, her dog, and you'll hear stories filled with pride and love. You'll hear a similar tone when Rose discusses Travell. She cares deeply about the Travell community. She lives in the neighborhood and she rides her bike to work. She spent the last decade making this community a little safer and a little happier each day. And in the end, I would suggest that that is Rose Mead's greatest accomplishment over these last 2 decades. For 2 decades, she made us feel a little bit more organized, a little bit more safe, and a little bit more happy. For 2 decades, she made every day just a little bit better for everybody who was lucky enough to need her help. Congratulations, Rose. Best to you in your retirement. We'll miss you.
Yes, you don't have to speak. That's part of the privilege. But congratulations. And I've been down there a number of times, and calm of the storm is exactly what I would attribute. I mean, it is crazy down there at elementary levels, and you were always so calm. So thank you for all your years of service. I appreciate it. With that, Mr. Martin could not make it tonight. You just looked at almost 100 years of education collectively, right there, that table. That's an incredible amount of wisdom and guidance that these people have brought to us, and you're going to be terribly missed. So thank you for all your years of service. So we're going to ask for the retirees to stand over here right behind Ms. Polster. We're going to take a photo. Ms. Polster, if you could just use your phone. We're going to ask the auditors, Gary, if you guys can come up. We're going to move our agenda around a little bit. Our auditors are going to come up first, and then we're going to get to public comments and Mr. McCullough after that. So, yeah. Or get people forward, but we can reverse. Yeah, I think I'm just.
Me. Whole show.
If they, all right. If anybody wanted to do a family photo in front of the Ridgewood logo, they're more than welcome to do that. All right. All right, we're all set? Okay. All right, so we have our auditor's report based on last year's school year, and thank you for joining us this evening.
Clerk Fincy and Higgins. It is March 7th, and I am presenting your audit for June 30th, 21. If you thought I lost the audit, you should have asked Rose. It seems like she finds everybody's stuff. Your audit wasn't lost, just so everybody knows why we're here so late in the season, almost 3/4 of the way into the 21-22 school year. Your report is required to include certain information from the State of New Jersey Division of Pensions on other post-employment benefits. Those amounts were not available to the various auditors throughout the state until last month. So the normal due date is December 5th. They moved it to February 5th, and then it was moved to March 15th. So your audit report is on time, even though it's really late. But you're with the whole other 600+ school districts in the state of New Jersey. I'll go over a few highlights. First of all, for anyone on the governance and administration, there were 2 documents issued. One is the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, which is the thick document that's a nationally recognized report format. And then you have what's called the Auditor's Management Report, which is a thin document that's promulgated by the New Jersey State Department of Education. The important thing to know in the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report is what type of audit opinion the district received for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 21. On page 2 of the audit on the top, it gives you your opinions on the various groupings, your governmental activities, your business type activities, your major funds, and then your aggregate remaining fund information. And I'm pleased to report that all those accounting groups, you received an unmodified opinion, which basically states that the accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America have been complied with. There's one emphasis of a matter. There was a new auditing principle known as GASB 84, Governmental Accounting Standard Boards. For any accountants who don't do government, you guys got FASBs and we got GASBs, all right? That's the way it works. And basically what this GASB did, it required your report to be restated to comply with that new GASB. And what it did, it took certain things that were previously reported in your trust funds and it moved them into 2 other funds. So it took your unemployment insurance trust fund, which is basically employee deductions that are held in trust for future claims if someone declares unemployment. That was moved from the fiduciary funds into the general fund. And then your student activities and athletic funds and your scholarship funds were moved from the fiduciary funds into the special revenue fund, which typically was just your federal and state grants. I'm not a fan of this. I think the old way was good, but I don't have a choice. In order to issue an unmodified audit opinion, we have to comply with the GASB standards. But they really have nothing to do with the general fund and special revenue fund operations, but somebody thought it was a better way to present them, and that's why there is this emphasis of a matter. After that, there's 2 specific areas I'll get into, and they're both in the Auditor's Management Report. The first being the findings and recommendations, and then the discussion of your year-end surplus or fund balance. For anyone who's following along, in the Auditor's Management Report, which is the thin document, our first finding is on page 2. And just as a summary to start off, there are 8 findings and recommendations, and there are 2 repeat findings and recommendations out of the 8. The first finding on the bottom of page 2 is that the payroll agency bank reconciliation includes certain invalid reconciling items. Most of these items offset each other. We've had discussions with the finance committee about someone from our offices coming over and assisting. It seems to be a pretty common problem in QuickBooks where entries are made and you can't get them out of the system unless you're a QuickBooks guru. And I think we have one of them on our staff, and we offered that assistance. So those invalid reconciling items have to be removed from the bank reconciliation. Turning to page 3, finding 2, certain transactions for May of 21 and June of 21 in the payroll agency and scholarship funds were not recorded in the district's accounting software as of year end June 30th, 21. We took it upon ourselves to obtain those transactions that were omitted, and they are properly reflected in your final audit report. However, in the future, all transactions that occur in the district should be included in the accounting software. Turning to page 4, there are comments from anybody from the public. Just because I'm reporting findings, all these other pages have other items, and if there's no finding, that means they were done correctly. So there's a lot of things that there's no findings, meaning they were fully compliant with the various regulation or law. On page 5, number 3, our audit disclosed that one vendor was paid on a contract in excess of the aggregate of the amount not to exceed that was approved by the board resolution. This was the result of the bid award amount not including additional services. So basically, there was a lump sum number for landscape services. That amount was approved in the resolution. The bid award also had snow removal services, which obviously we can't predict snow, and it's on an hourly basis or per inch, depending on how the bid award is. And there was no amount included in that resolution for those services. So essentially, you went over the aggregate approved by the governing body. So in the future, and I know that similar bid was awarded this year already, we recommended that the board take action to amend that aggregate number to include these additional services, so we don't come back in a few months and tell you you did it again. So hopefully that is being corrected, and it'll go away once the amendment to the resolution is made. Turning to page 6, finding number 4, our audit indicated the Food Service Enterprise Fund ended the year with a deficit of $120,292. This is really the result of COVID and the fact that the district does not and has not in the past participated in the National School Lunch Program. Districts that were in the program last year, they were reimbursed for the full rate on every student served. But in the past, your district and other districts, it doesn't make sense to be part of the program. So essentially, this is what happened. Hopefully, when you're back up and running, this is going to be basically worked down through current operations, a profit in future years. But remedial action has to be taken to eliminate that deficit. On the same page, under the Infant Toddler Development Program, number 5, our audit indicated the Infant Toddler Development Fund ended the year at an unrestricted net position of $143,740. This is similar to the deficit in the Food Service Fund. It's an enterprise fund. And additionally, the financial records were not charged out on a timely basis for costs incurred by the general fund on behalf of the infant toddler. Okay, everybody's safe again? I don't know if that was a coincidence, but I'm not going there. The recommendation here is twofold. One is that corrective action has to be taken to eliminate the deficit in the infant toddler program. And also the financial records should reflect expenses incurred on behalf of the general fund on a real-time basis. I believe action's been already taken in that area. But the bottom line is it's okay to incur costs for one fund on behalf of another, but the expenses should be reconciled timely, not in a lump sum aggregate entry, periodically, because you then don't have the expenses matching the revenues. And it's a good comment, and it really will assist the governance in evaluating the program on a monthly basis. Number 6, this is one of the 2 repeats. Certain fees collected for the infant toddler, the deposits were not made in a timely basis. Basically, funds were collected and they weren't gone to the bank. We usually use 48 to 72 hours. New Jersey municipalities are subject to what they call the 48-hour rule. Doesn't matter what the amount of money is, but you're supposed to deposit within 48 hours. So we kind of use a similar rule, but many of these deposits were far in excess of 3 days. Turning to page 7, we have item 7. There's a few areas within the student activity accounts, but you only got one recommendation, and this is also a repeat. Certain bank reconciliations include prior year reconciling items. This may be very similar to the payroll agency with regards to QuickBooks. Under the athletic account, pre-numbered receipts were not utilized. Certain cash receipts did not have supporting documentation, and there's a deficit cash balance of the bank reconciliation at June 30th, 21. And then finally, cash receipts and disbursement ledgers in the high school did not reconcile to the year-end bank reconciliations as presented for audit, and they were subsequently adjusted so they're properly presented. So this recommendation, it's fairly common in a lot of districts to have areas in the student activity accounts, since typically you don't have accountants running those books and these things do happen, but continued efforts be made to properly record and account for the transactions in the student activity fund accounts. On the bottom of page 7, this is your last comment. It was a significant deficiency in last year's audit. It's been downgraded, if I want to say, to a general comment. There were certain current year additions that were not included on the year-end fixed asset report, and hence we've included that, but it was substantially improved from the prior year. And I have to correct myself. That is actually the 3rd repeat. There were 3 out of 8 repeats. It was the fees at the infant toddler timeliness, the student body, and the additions. I didn't include it as a repeat because it was substantially corrected, but it was basically a repeat based upon the back page summary. Does anybody have any questions before I discuss the surplus position at year end on any of the 8 findings?
So
and
just to, yeah,
recommendations?
so you have a $120 million budget, 8 findings, no significant deficiencies, and substantially improved or corrected things from last year.
You almost sound like an accountant.
You've taught me well.
That's it. Well,
In
you-
3 days.
You're a good listener, a good learner. Yeah, that is the case, and they're all general comments. And keep in mind also, in addition to your $120 million in expenditures, you also had another $2 million in your federal and state grant funds. The district was subject to both a federal and state single audit, as we call it, under the uniform guidance on the federal side and under NJOMB 1508 on the state side. And there's no comments or recommendations related to those grant compliance areas, which are substantial. And to undertake a single audit, a district must have expenses of up $750,000 or more in each area. So if you were under in federal, you just have a state or vice versa. But in both cases, you exceeded $750,000 in expenditures, and you were subject to those single audits. And there are no findings related to those 2, nor are there any internal control matters or noncompliance, as the superintendent is well aware of. It sounds like he read his,
So
read his cliff notes.
I have a couple of questions. One is you mentioned that for food service and another enterprise fund that we have, this year we will have profits. Food service historically had profits. It was just because of COVID we had deficit last year. But you said, but still you must take a remedial action within 30 days. So if we know that in the current year we are going to make up for that deficit, is that sufficient remedial action
Well,
that we know that we are making?
Yeah,
profit?
I guess, I don't know if I said it or Scott said it, that
Right.
to clear it up, the district must pass a corrective action plan within 30 days of accepting the audit. But you have till June 30th to correct the finding.
Right, so but can the corrective action plan be just a resolution which says, we understand there's a deficit, but this year we will have a profit that should offset that deficit?
That could be the correct part of the remedial action. If you think you're going to make it up, in fact, in the footnotes, we have a comment, and we have to comment so the public knows that you'll either make it up through current year operations or future operations, as we call it.
Right.
And or a subsidy if you had to. So when you get to June 30th, if you have not had sufficient profit out of the 21-22 school year, you'll have to take a second motion to come up with the difference.
Or we can say that, so last year, so suppose we had I don't have the exact number. I think it's 130 something, but suppose we have $100,000 deficit. We said this year we made up 50,000 of that. And in the following year, future year, we'll make another 50,000. So that's our corrective action that yes.
Well, you're going to get another audit comment for June 30th, 22 though, because the Department of Education expects you to clear up deficits in the subsequent year.
Does it expect us to clear up deficit, or does it expect us to have a plan to clear up deficit?
I believe it expects you to clear it up. Otherwise, you're just looking at another recommendation because you didn't totally eliminate it.
Right, so it's a recommendation, but we are working towards it.
Well, I mean, the only downside of that, you'll get a second recommendation.
Okay.
Which is, but then your school business administrator and superintendent have to answer to that because they're required on an annual basis to do a follow-up compliance of the corrective action plan. But I mean, if it's your pleasure to proceed and make it a 2-year correction and you know the ramifications,
Right.
that you're going to get the school business administrator and the superintendent being notified by the county superintendent that you didn't clear it up and you want to accept it that way, that's your deal.
Okay, yeah, I just want to understand.
Yeah.
And then for the unemployment, I think you mentioned that it's just the unemployment fund or the amount, but then why is it shown as expense? It's shown as 176,000 or something as unemployment expense.
Where were you reading that?
I
If-
received a draft a few
If
few
you,
weeks
if,
ago.
if the unemployment funds current year funding is less than the actual expenses paid to the state of New Jersey, we're expensing the balance rollover from the prior year.
Okay.
All right, so that's the only way to show it from a, let me see. So
I saw a draft.
I think
don't know.
you're talking about section 1A. If you go to page 12, the 192,672, is that,
where are you?
it's the section 1 on
Page
page,
12 of the,
on
yeah,
page
summary.
12 of your summary.
Oh,
Under the
okay.
fund
Yeah, the
balance?
192,672.
Yes.
Right.
You have cash in the bank and that's a restricted reserve. And that's what I basically said. In the past, it was held in the fiduciary funds. Now they've lifted it up and dropped it into the general fund bucket. You can't
Okay.
do anything with it any different.
So
in the
it's
past.
not, this does not represent claims or that we paid. This is just a
This
fund.
is
that-
this is the roll forward ending balance.
Okay.
All right. And like I said, I don't agree with it. It's really got nothing to do with your general fund operations. You can't spend it and go out buy pencils and books tomorrow. But they rolled it in, but this is the national standard. And I guess we all have to accept it. Somebody's out there smarter than us.
And so you're saying, to reiterate, that this is one of the new accounting rules, so we may not, these set of claims are already embedded in a different, different fund. So now they're.
In the past. But
Yes.
But this is cash on hand, this
Mhm.
reserve. So basically what we've done is we've taken a bank account and moved it from the fiduciary funds and dropped it into your general fund with an offsetting reserve. So there's nothing you can do with it any different than the past. It's a presentation situation.
And this is cumulative. It could be unemployment claims that could be dating 5, 10 years. It's a cumulative that
Right.
we're required to have. And if the claims end up being less than that,
It'll
we still
grow.
can't, yeah, we can't touch
Right.
it. It's a
It may
restricted.
grow, it may go down. It's,
It's-
you know,
it-
it's
it's
just
Completely
it's the
restricted.
way it is.
Okay.
Thank you.
And that's the same thing with the student activity accounts and the scholarship funds. They've been rolled into the grant fund. And once again, just because they're in a grant fund, you can't do anything different than in the past. They're the students' money or their scholarship funds that are restricted for scholarships. So there's nothing you can do different. It's purely a presentation. If you want a copy of GASB 84, it's about 92 pages. I'll send it over. After Dr. Gorman reads it, he'll pass it around. Because he's learning a lot now.
Thank you.
I have a question. What would be, how would you clear the deficits in food service and infant toddler?
Well, how would I clear them? All I can do is give you maybe a handful of ways.
Yes.
You can raise revenue, okay, increase revenues. You can cut expenses. You can make a transfer from the general fund, which is permissive. You can discontinue the program. That'll stop future losses, but you'll still have to deal with the past losses.
Right.
And that's what you have, that's what's in your toolbox.
So can you transfer out of a reserve? You know, we've got $2.7 million in our
Capital?
maintenance.
Once it goes into the maintenance, it's there.
It has to be
forever
maintenance.
Until you pull it out for maintenance.
Okay.
Once you pass that June resolution and
Yeah.
you fill the buckets, as we say, between
Yeah.
the emergency reserve and the maintenance reserve and the capital reserve, that's gone.
Okay.
Only for the future purpose in those specific areas that are permissive to be charged.
Mhm.
But you can't go and withdraw out of there to fund the deficit. I mean, you could ask the county superintendent.
Right,
I mean, if you, but he's gonna say, well, don't you have another place?
right.
So, but I mean, if you were
But you could-
destitute, and I'm sure they'd let you go in there, but you have other resources you could use.
Right.
And, or they would tell you to, all right, do a recapitulation in June. And before you make that transfer in June to fill more money into the capital reserve and maintenance reserve,
You could pay
go
that.
there. So I wouldn't ask that question
Okay,
only to the county, because they're gonna start making you go through circles and hoops
right.
to prove that that's the only other place you could withdraw it from.
Mhm.
And that's not gonna be easy.
Right. So you could just take it from your general fund.
Well, general fund has a specific line in the state chart of accounts,
Mhm.
transfer of deficit to an enterprise fund.
Yeah.
And you've used it before.
Right.
So,
Right.
So
So
to
I-
follow up
I-
on that, if you transfer from the general fund to the enterprise fund, there's no, if the enterprise funds end up making profit, they cannot pay back into the general fund.
no,
No.
no.
So once you do the transfer, the money is,
It's
Sunk cost.
it's final.
it's
Final.
final.
It's a residual transfer versus a cash transfer. Once you charge a budget with it, it goes over there.
And
Right.
they're done. There's no.
Well, the only other
recapture.
way, if you scratch your head and decide, oh, maybe we incurred something for them that we haven't charged them, you could charge them out for something else if you don't feel all the things are, you don't charge indirect costs of your administration because you don't have an indirect cost study, but that's a whole nother area to explore. But
Is there a cap to how much you can charge back and
it
what's
would
the
have to be
duration?
it would have to be done based upon a legitimate indirect cost study. So if the superintendent spends 30 minutes a day for 180 days and you take his salary and you end up with 40 cents a day for him, and then you could charge, back. But that involves establishing an indirect cost study by a consultant,
I think
which
the
is
easier-
costly.
And that sets precedence for next year's also. I think the easier one would be capital. We can spend on capital for that. If they have a profit in the future year, we always have some capital projects in the building, so. those
No,
capital
because the
projects-
enterprise fund profits have to reside in the enterprise fund.
Correct.
So
But it could
But
help,
it could be used for
it
capital.
could be used for capital.
If
in
it
the
relates,
building.
if it
If it
relates
relates
to
to-
that particular enterprise fund,
Right.
yes.
right, so
Right.
you don't, so the scenario is if you want to clear a deficit, I always go back to the question of, do you have to clear it? Can you just display the loss? Because that's an incurred loss.
Display the loss, and Gary's gonna tell you next year you got an audit recommendation.
Right, so you get an
Eventually,
audit-
the county's gonna tell you to do something.
Correct, so
You
you
can hold on as long as you want, but they're gonna send a nasty gram one day and says, you guys, in your June resolution are pushing money here and there and eliminate the deficit. So take them on. It's not my deal.
Okay, so if we don't clear the deficit and we display the loss as is, then we get an audit recommendation the following year.
Correct.
It has no repercussions in terms of the county withholding any funds from us for not pursuing or remediating the enterprise fund
Is
losses.
there get an attorney to answer that, not me.
Okay, the answer I think is no, but okay, yeah, all right, thank you.
Sure.
So, going on, you're gonna go over our reserves now, right? Is
If
that
we're
what-
done with the findings and recommendations, I'd be more than happy to go over the.
Okay, because my
calculation.
questions next have to do with the
Okay.
So I
reserve.
just want to, sorry, I just want to clear up though, with kind of going around the circles here. We have 3 prior recommendations that have carried over from past years.
Correct.
But there's nothing, they're just kind of saying, hey, just do this. There's nothing, we're going to get a recommendation again if we don't. What's going to keep happening? Because these things keep coming up. What's going to happen if we don't?
I mean, the guy over here has to file a compliance every year. Eventually, they could ask him, why aren't you cleaning these things
Okay.
up? All right. I mean, they're general comments. To me, they're very simple to clean up.
Agreed,
mean,
agreed.
You got to get somebody to bring the checks over from the infant
Right.
toddler and get them in the bank within 3 days. That's real easy. The other one, somebody has to sit and maybe do a in-service with the activity account advisors and go over the issues, and hopefully they catch on and they clean them up. And then finally, it's only the capital additions. Before you get your capital study done, somebody's got to proof the capital additions to the capital outlay Fund 12. So if that proof is done right and everything makes it into the addition reports, those 3, I mean, I do it myself, but I'm too busy.
Well, we thank you for your help.
They're pretty, no, they're pretty good. They're pretty easy to fix, I think. All right.
I
And,
agree.
and I think the superintendent's onto accounting and auditing now. So he probably can jump right in June.
Thank you.
Shall we do surplus?
Let's do it.
All right, this is the fun part. So for anybody who's been up here for a while, there was a Senate Bill 1701 about, I don't know, 15 years ago, that limited the amount of surplus that you could keep at year end as unassigned. And it was at 2%. Legislation was passed sometime a year ago that for 21 and 22 fiscal years, you can keep 4%. So this is the first go around. I assume it's all COVID related that they feel you should have more money on hand for the unexpected. So the calculation is done like it's been done in the past, but it's at a higher level. The total expenditures for the general fund were $123,803,328. The state of New Jersey paid for your district teachers' pension annuity fund, Social Security and pension of $21,043,983. That gets reduced from the total expenditures because it was not in your budget that was approved by governance. The adjusted number is $102,759,345. We apply 4% to that. 4,110,374 is the residual. There's certain aid that you received that did not get appropriated to the budget, and it's detailed down the bottom. Your extraordinary aid in excess of budget of $1,265,847, and then non-public transportation aid of $48,554. Both of those aids are added to the 4%, and you're permitted to appropriate them anytime they're in this school year without commissioner approval because they're state aids that you didn't use in the 21 year. So your maximum unassigned balance is $5,424,775. Now we look at your overall fund balance picture at year end, and you begin with $14,051,319. In the current 21-22 budget, you put in a legally restricted amount from a prior capital, I believe, project of $108,884. So that number's been used to balance for tax relief to 21-22 budget. In addition to that, you have excess surplus from the June 30th 20 audit of $650,000. That is also in the 21-22 budget for tax relief. Your capital reserve is split into 2 accounts. The residual of $1,118,990 is after you appropriated in the 21-22 budget $1,242,837. The maintenance reserve is $2,733,778. The emergency reserve is $626,636. Unemployment, $192,672. Year-end encumbrances. This represents purchase orders that were approved prior to year end, but the goods and services have not been received of $229,092. And then you also put in for tax relief in the 21-22 budget $816,665. So after you basically reduce that from the above number of approximately 14 million, you're left with 6,331,775. This is compared to the maximum unassigned fund balance, and you have excess surplus of $907,000. And this is the 650 plus the 257 outlined in your resolution in June. Keep in mind the roadmap you set in June, which is permitted by statute to fill these various reserves, is reflected here. So going into the 22-23 budget season, which I know is upon us, you are required to put $907,000 in as a minimum for tax relief. And you can see that comparing below to the 650 in the recapitulation, what you have in this year, but you do have other money in there, as I previously stated. So that is the whole position of the district as of June 30th, 21.
So I had some questions.
Shoot.
On the 4% in the surplus, is that going to go down to 2% or for
22, 23.
it? In,
I don't know. Well, I believe the current law has a sunset provision. So June 30th, 22, you'll have 4% again.
oh,
If-
okay.
If it's amended, I can't predict that,
Yeah.
but I believe there's a 2-year sunset, so it would go back down to 2%. So essentially, in June of that 23 year, you'll have to deal in your June 30th resolution of that extra 2%
Okay.
on what to do with it, if it goes that way.
Right.
Right.
And if it went that way, does it have to go into the subsequent budget or could it be put into capital reserve?
That is your discretion
Okay.
in June of 23.
Okay. I know that on maintenance reserve, you're allowed to have up to $5 million, right?
Well, if you have the capper, it's all spelled out. I happen to tab the page because
Oh.
I was kind of waiting for that question, actually.
I think.
I really
Karen-
couldn't sleep last night either. I
Oh,
knew it was
really?
coming. But no,
I mean, to me, the
no,
2.7 is
you're
too
correct.
high.
I want to give you the exact number.
Yeah.
You file a comprehensive maintenance plan on an annual basis. It's known as your M1 report.
Right.
And it's based upon a calculation of the square footage of the school buildings, and it's $5,223,000. You are correct.
Okay. So personally, I think $2.7 million in maintenance is awfully high for us to be carrying that. Though, once we put it in, it can only be used for maintenance. It can't, can it be transferred to capital? Because we've got a lot of capital projects that need to get done.
Unless you seek commissioner approval, the law does not permit it.
Okay.
But if you can provide a good reason and make, you possibly could get something changed, but it's not the
Mhm.
norm.
Yeah, all right.
Because usually once it goes in, it stays there until you reappropriate it for maintenance.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I think that was short-sighted, but okay, I think that was it, because I am concerned about all of our capital projects and funding those. So I'll have to relook at that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I have a question on the reserved excess surplus of 650 and 907. So
The 650, that's just a recapitulation that's required.
right,
The 650 is from the June 30th, 20 audit, and you've already put it into the current budget of 21, 22. The 907 is what you set up in your June 21 to put in the 22, 23.
so 650 and 257.
Right, but it's 2 separate years.
Okay. And then, so does this 907, does this reduce? So when you mentioned that, for example, legally restricted 108 or 650 or or this 650, 907 number, does it reduce from, suppose we are saying we'll increase the tax by 2% levy. So does it reduce from that 2% aggregate, or is it above and beyond 2% in the next year's budget? So if our budget was 100,000, we increase it by 2% to 102. So does it become 102 plus 907 the next
No.
year's budget, or?
Well, no, 907 is not part of the cap, right? Scott. So
So it's not part of the gap.
no, no. But the thing to realize, right now, your current budget is the 108, the 650, and the 816. Your baseline is 907, so you have to fill that void right now. Otherwise, it's got to be made up some other way.
Okay.
Either additional revenues or reductions in expenditures. But you did take, based upon the previous year, when you only had 650 and 108, you added 816. So there's kind of a little bit of a void there of like 700,000 right now. If you just go into the 22-23 budget, you got 700,000 difference between the total appropriated surpluses, excluding capital reserve, versus the mandated 907 it has to go in.
Okay.
So when you think about the 4% cap that we're in under right now, and we have it, you said it's supposed to sunset in year-end 2023. Have you seen it in the past where it stays at 4%, or is the expectation what you've heard from?
It was never at 4%.
It was
and
never,
we
right.
never had COVID either. And that's why it's at 4%. So I have no idea. You would need legislators to amend that current legislation to change. Maybe they'll change it to 3%. I don't know the rationale, other than the fact that I believe they were thinking that you should be able to, if I want to use the word, stockpile more surplus for the fear of the unknown. That's the only thing I can think of why they pushed it to a higher limit.
So if we have, going back to the allowable adjustments, if we have a similar scenario where extraordinary aid comes in higher than what we budgeted, this 1.265 million, that is part of the year-end 21, right?
That was received. You budgeted 1,576,345
Uh-huh,
and received 2,842,192.
mm-hmm.
So the fact that that is in addition to what your budget reflects, you get it as an add-on to use in a subsequent year. But I don't know if anybody can predict how much you're going to get in extraordinary aid, because the guys in Trenton have a right to fix the percentages, and it happened to be higher this year. So most districts received a lot more than they received. If they cut that back, you might not have any excess over what you budgeted. So that's unpredictable.
So then when you mean the subsequent year, that would be for the received 1.265, which added to the 21-22 year, the year we're in now. No,
It added to the June 30th year end,
year end 2020.
but you can use it in 21. We're probably
Right,
talking,
that's what I mean. Yeah,
I think we're talking about 5 different years already in the past
Yes.
half hour here, but yes.
You can use this
If you had an issue this year, you
21,
could,
22.
21, 22,
Mhm.
that was emergent, you had no other funds in your budget, you can pass a resolution and appropriate that money into any line item in the general fund budget and use it for any purpose that's legal.
But do you have, unless it's been already allocated to the different reserves,
It hasn't been.
it hasn't, right?
It's
because
excluded.
It's excluded.
But if you don't use it this year, when we redo the calculation at June 30th, 22, it's going to get recycled down to the bottom again. So essentially, if you froze it here, that money, if you redid the calculation, is going to be part of your June 30th excesses, because it goes away. And we have to start with 4% again. And that extraordinary aid will only be the amount if you have any excess from the 21-22 year.
So what happens if we for the 20, I know we're talking about many years. What happens if for 22, 23, because we're in the budget, what if we budget a certain extraordinary aid, it's kind of like this that we did in the start of 2021 year, this year, and we end up receiving less than, then we have to use some of the excess surplus
It's,
that-
it just
how does that
falls to
work
the
out?
bottom line as a deficit in revenue and it'll be offset by other pluses. So if you don't spend a certain amount on the appropriation side, they'll just wash out against each other. It's like a big recycling bin, right? If you got excess, it's there. If you don't use it, it flows back in. The next year, if you get less, that's a hit against the other excesses that, I mean, typically your district runs excesses, thankfully. So that would be absorbed with some appropriation that you didn't spend.
I know it's difficult for at least me to understand the cycle process because
Did you say psycho or
we,
psycho? Because it is a psycho process here, if you see it. I mean, all these reserves just go in a circle and they, you know, we're talking about 3 years here. You have 20s excess coming into 21, 22. We just finished 21. We're talking about what you can put in 22, 23, and we told you what you're going to expire in 22, 23. So it is a crazy process.
I just want to make sure that as we look ahead to the year end 2022, that we contemplate and make sure that our extraordinary aid is covered. That if not extraordinary aid, that are those programming associated for extraordinary aid are covered, so that if we don't get more than we project and we actually get less, we don't have to cut somewhere else in the general fund. So
Well, I don't think you necessarily have to cut. You just have to see if you've not spent your full budget on the other side, and it'll offset that. So there's no need to start looking for cuts. You
don't want to.
typically have some line items, you don't expend everything. So
okay.
that would be used to subsidize that revenue shortfall.
How do you craft a resolution for that, just to push more into
don't-
the,
You don't have to do anything.
okay,
That would just be part of the year-end close out of the books.
right,
So if you have $300,000 shortfall in revenue and 600,000 unexpended appropriation, it's going to be a plus 300 still. So there's no need for anybody to do anything. Now, if your SBA tells you we don't have $1 left on the appropriation side and I'm short in revenue of 300,000, you got an issue. But I don't expect that issue to happen.
Ms. Clark, that's why we tend to freeze the budget early on in the year.
Okay.
To make sure those funds are available if we need them down the road.
All right, well, thank you once again for employing our firm to do your audit. Your year end's coming up, your budget's coming up. I mean, you have to do that corrective action plan. But other than approving this tonight, the 30-day starts ticking from tonight to approve the corrective action plan. That's the only thing basically I'm informing you should do to ensure you're compliant with the State Department of Education's deadline.
Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so we're going to get back on track now. We're going to start with Nora with the student report, and then Mr. McCullough, you're going to be up next. So if you want to get situated with your laptop, Ms. Train, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, we'll do that. Yeah.
Okay. The annual Super Science Saturday was on March 5th, and instead of doing the fair in person, the event was held online. The itinerary for the day included presentations by the RHS Invent Team, learning about animals and the NASA ICE Stat-2 mission. The senior fashion show is on March 13th, and seniors have started being contacted for fittings, and they have been making appointments for their hair and makeup. The entire class is super excited for the event and to raise money for prom. Today is the first day of spring sports. As our winter season is coming to a close, here are some things that I would like to mention about our winter sports teams. The Ridgewood cheer team competed at the New Jersey State Championship for cheerleading for the first time. It was an amazing experience for the team and an incredible end to their season. 6 members of the wrestling team qualified for the regional competition this year. Derek Anderson and Bobby Turso were 2 of the 6 that I previously mentioned. Competed in states on Saturday. Both the girls and boys varsity basketball teams qualified for the NJSIAA sectional tournament this year. Unfortunately, the girls lost in their quarterfinal round against East Orange in a close game, but the boys had their sectional finals game tonight against Hackensack. At the state meet of champions, the track team dominated again. Junior Talia Hutchinson won the championship in pole vault. That means she's the New Jersey overall winner. Emma Rinke, Alicia Spencer, Lucia Raboli, and Olivia Grace combined to run the 4x400 in a school record time of 4 minutes and 89 seconds at the Bennett Center. This was the third overall time in the state of New Jersey. And senior Luke Naspelius placed 6th in pole vault. The DECA team went to states last week, a competition that they had been preparing for this entire year so far. They dominated with almost everyone that competed placing in the top 5 in their category. In total, over 20 members of the RHS team are moving on to nationals later this year. The National Honor Society ran a read-along in the campus center last week. This was a good opportunity for club members to get involved in the Ridgewood community, but also a place for them to reach out to new faces at the school. During the periods of the day, students and teachers went to the booths and donated and recommended books together. In light of many students, faculty, and staff members whose families are impacted by the Ukraine and Russian conflict, the Project Interact Club is supporting the Ukrainian community. They are currently collecting money for Ukraine through shaker cans during lunch and also collected $1 from each person at the door on Friday last week. They are donating the money to organizations that are working on helping those in Ukraine. The whole school wore blue and yellow on Friday, the Ukrainian flag colors, to show support. The concert casts are starting to work on their musicals after almost 2 months off. The new show dates are scheduled for late April. I'm so excited to be back working with my cast because it's a great opportunity to meet new people that I never would have met otherwise. And it's a nice break from doing homework. The 2 jazz bands at the high school, Jazz Lap and Big Band, will be performing for the 8th graders in the campus center on Tuesday for the Jazz Coffee House. This event not only shows younger peers what's going on in the jazz bands at the high school, but it doubles as an opportunity to raise money for the RHS band. That's all I have.
That's a lot. And, we're in the last third of the school year and just great to hear these spring sports are starting and all these other jazz band, everything else is going on. So, and what was the mood in the school today with the masks?
I was actually pretty impressed with how many people were willing to push past the mask mandate. Not a lot of people in my classes were wearing masks. I would say like 1 or 2 per class probably was. And it was really nice to see faces that I haven't seen before. Yeah.
And speaking of great things that are coming back, we have the art all over the place, bringing this place alive again. And Mr. McCullough, the supervisor of the department, is here to just share what's going on with the visual and performing arts.
Had Youth Art Month. So super excited that that's back. We have a reception the 23rd of this month. And I thought with just an opportunity to present to you today to show you a little bit of what's not here. Obviously you guys to walk around and see the show. Some of our first clientele to get to see the artwork. It just went up last Friday. So I just put together a very quick presentation of what's happening throughout the district. And this is, it's really just a quick snapshot. This is not like a curated where we've been holding on to this. When I was talking to a superintendent about coming tonight, we chatted about what I should show. So this is really just a gathering of what's happening today, in these schools. So here at Hawes, they have a display. They're focusing on just using artwork to share kindness. This is a fun project of using emotions, and here emojis about how to, you can see on the bottom right, if you display them differently, they look different from different sides, right? Called an amograph. Here's 2 projects. This is the one on the left was a sort of like a STEAM project. It's actually called Brush Bots. So it's actually like a little toothbrush that has a motor on it.
and you dip it in paint and they move around the space. It's sort of like an abstract creation, some ceramic work. And again, this, all elementary school work. Designing some sneakers for superheroes, or just expressing personal interests. This was really neat, just clearly some landscape work, but a marriage between sort of science and art, because they talked a little bit about what creates the Northern Lights and how they might be represented. As I'm sure you know, there was STEAM presentations that occurred at all the elementary schools. Willard was one of the teachers there, was one of the people that helped put all this together. So that was a really exciting day, for a number of days, as it happened in multiple schools over multiple days. BF just some oil crayons landscapes, showing a depth of field, right, from a foreground to middle ground to background. Some 3D work, also countered with focusing on 1-point perspective over at GW. And then just a couple of pictures of work that's happening at the high school. So it's a ceramic mosaic, a self-portrait talking about the global pandemic, some ceramic work. This is a critique happening in the hallway amongst some AP Studio work. Then an interactive design using Tinkercad to test some things out before applying them to the microcontrollers. And these are just some pictures from the most recent Maroon and White, which is a program, it's like 50 years going strong, of where we highlight musicians and artists. And so these are the work or some of the works that are currently up in the art gallery right now. And I mean, because the work is incredible. So again, we have 150 pieces or whatever that are represented here. But in the 9 schools, there's thousands of pieces of artwork that are going on. Obviously, it's an area that I'm really passionate about, that we get to explore creativity, student voice, innovation, and gives the students an opportunity to think and function differently than in other spaces.
And I appreciate you being here and displaying all this, because we don't get to see a lot of this stuff behind the scenes. And we've worked together a lot and really put a tremendous amount of effort and resources into this. The arts are just one of the 4 A's, academics, athletics, activities, and then the arts. We are a comprehensive high school or a comprehensive school district, and we do value all of them equally. And to see the amazing work that you're putting forward here. And what I liked most what you talked about, Stacey and I have talked a lot about how do we break down the silos. So when you talk about the Northern Lights and art, and I observed a music class the other day, and the teacher was teaching, a song, but it was Black History Month, and the whole thing was about the Underground Railroad and everything related. And I was so amazed at the students, how much they had retained from the year before when they learned about the Underground Railroad, and they were able to apply it and then break it into what they were learning. It's just really impressive that the job the students are learning and the teachers, what they're doing on a daily basis. So thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Looks great.
Thank you, Mr. McCullough.
I'm now going to open the first public comment period. Once again, there's a 4-minute maximum per speaker. Please sign in when you get an opportunity. Before or after you speak, there is a timer to just be mindful of the time. We're going to take comments from those who are present, and then we will go to those remotely. Please state your name and address for the record. Welcome.
Good evening, Ann Burton Walsh, 112 South Irving. Great to see you all in person. I'm here for myself, not on behalf of any organization, to ask the district to do what it can to put into place an 8:30 start time for the high school and ideally for the middle schools in September 2022. This topic has been discussed, as you all know, within the district for many years. I attended a presentation here in 2017 or 2018 regarding later start. And I know that Dr. Ann Robinson, a pediatrician, and now RHS Principal Jeff Nias have been working on the issue since 2009. And I know that many of you have been working hard on this, and I really appreciate that. And I appreciate the December 1st presentation that the district put on regarding later start. And I know and I believe that many of you support this. And if you could wave a magic wand, you would make it happen. It's just that, you know, the devil is in the logistical details. And so on that, I want to say that no one I know supports 90-minute classes. I think that's really a non-starter for everyone that I've spoken to. In fact, even 80-minute classes have been, I think, you know, for everything but science lab, they've been fairly problematic, you know, requiring teachers to kind of stretch to fill the time. And sometimes that time is not filled, or it's just too long for a lot of students. And I know that many in the community, you know, object to an end time of 3:30 or later. And ending earlier would require, you know, reducing class switching time, reducing the number of periods, and shaving some instructional minutes. But doing all of these three things appears to be very doable. You know, as Dr. Gorman mentioned on December 1st, and as has been shown by some research that's been done using some very conservative estimates, Ridgewood is already among the highest, or is currently among the highest in terms of total instructional minutes among our peer districts. And in fact, several of them have been outperforming us with fewer instructional minutes. And I think it goes without saying that well-rested students will get more out of a slightly shaved down instructional, you know, minute day versus the current situation. In addition, implementing later start would eliminate the enrichment mornings that, you know, don't provide consistent sleep and are not available to everyone. I was surprised to learn that people living in the Hawes district, students living in the Hawes district, and others who are bused are not able to take advantage of the enrichment mornings. Thank you so much for your time and for working on this issue and for your service.
Hi, my name is Deborah Steinbaum, and I too am here to speak to the school start time issue. You may know me as the founder of the Start School Later chapter for Ridgewood, but I'm also a parent and also a pediatrician. And Start School Later is an organization that's national. We here in Ridgewood, I think we've done a really good job of kind of discussing amongst ourselves how important a later school start time is for adolescents. I'm here to really encourage us to have an 8:30 start time and a 3:05 end time. We need, with this goal of later start, which is supported by not just the American Academy of Pediatrics, but numerous organizations all over the country. Once we have this goal, we need flexibility in implementation. And I think having some flexibility with the school scheduling is going to be important. I was in Boston this weekend speaking with some mothers who have younger kids and older kids. And I was telling them about the school start time work. And they're both from different high performing districts. Both districts have switched to a later start time. The mother of the teens said to me, "Oh, I can't imagine doing things without this." And the mother of the little kids actually said the same thing. She's a working mom and she couldn't imagine going to work and having kids sitting around the house. She loves the earlier start time that she now has for her younger students. So as we tackle this issue and as we hit barriers, I really encourage us to reach out and use the wealth of opportunity that we have to talk to people who've successfully made the change. Every month, it seems, numerous high-performing districts, just like Ridgewood, are changing. and are changing start times. And in September, it will be the entire state of California. So when we reach out and talk to people, we hear about how the barriers are best overcome. And I think it really would be useful to us, rather than just hearing about the barriers, listing the barriers and then reaching out and finding out, okay, well, one, we could do this. Two, we could do that. Well, Brookline, they did this. And in Chatham, New Jersey, where they may be switching soon, they're going to do this. These are high-performing districts that Ridgewood compares itself to. I think we are going to be behind if we don't make this change, because we know it affects academics, it affects mental health, it affects well-being, it affects athletics. My final note, and I can email this to you, is that I just received word that there's a national conference on making the transition to later school start times out of Challenge Success, which is a group out of Stanford, on April 6th. And it's really for administrators, and it's about kind of working out the kinks of making the transition. So I can forward that to you. It's an hour-long workshop for administrators. Thank you.
Good evening, Julian Chadlishvili, and I'm not here for the late start time. Thank you. Good evening again. In February of her 8th grade in 2016, my eldest child came home and said that teachers' recommendations came out about who gets into what class for high school. I was perplexed because even by then there was already tons of research of how detrimental to achievement and counterproductive academic tracking is, and also how inequitable. Most surprising was the fact that class placements are based on teachers' recommendation, the most subjective and outdated way to end up in the different tracks, and biased. This past week, high school parents received an email explaining the appeal process and using the words such as growth, academic path, feedback, and mental health as part of the rationale for recommendations. These are my observations. How justifiable is the system in a district where there is zero coherence between preparation for high school by 2 middle schools, zero coherence between teaching methods and styles in the same subject section, complete absence of unified grading policy, where the feedback is either delayed by at least 2 weeks or goes in the form, I think this class will be good for you. Good for you statement demonstrates a fixed mindset, and that is after the district invested a lot into professional learning or growth mindset. It is also hard to believe that the placements and recommendations are done in the name of mental health and elevating anxiety, when even the former superintendent stated that there are no resources for support students' mental health the way it's supposed to be. Majority of staff cannot recognize the signs of true mental health challenges and do not know how to address them. If you truly want to increase student well-being, it doesn't actually cost a lot. Seek to form a relationship with each student and learn about their experiences, making sure that every student has a safe environment to learn and embrace their cultural differences. On a larger scale, using arbitrary teacher recommendations without an open rubric and selection process makes the entire process a lottery and sends a message to our kids that district does not hold them on high expectations and they're just not good enough to perform on a higher level. As a taxpayer, it sends me a message that the district does not hold teaching staff on high expectations either, undermining their ability to support and develop all student skills and only rely on gifted abilities, an antiquated notion. There is a precedent in our district where it can be done correctly. My eldest child, who is a sophomore in college now, did not hold mallets until 6th grade and was not involved in music at all. Under the amazing support and guidance of both music directors in high school, she participated all 4 years in the marching band, peed for a musical percussion ensemble, became a section leader, and reached wins band as a junior. There is a reason why our music program is one of the best in the country. Why the same methods cannot be extended to academic subjects, but instead we're putting students into boxes and openly state that keeping them out of advanced classes is good for their mental health and where they will be most successful. Schools where each student has access to rigorous learning opportunities, student outcomes are not predictable by demographics, and students feel respected and celebrated for who they are. This means that every single student, regardless of race, ethnicity, gender, socioeconomic status, and any other dimension of identity, is provided with the support they need to be successful. When we were looking where to move in 2001, Ridgewood was chosen, as so many of our neighbors did, based on the school system. In 2001, Ridgewood public schools were ranked third among the geographic districts, after Princeton and Milburn. We're not there anymore, and unfortunately, I do not wonder why. As per the most recent United States News ranking of high schools, only 63% of our students took an AP exam, only 57% passed one AP exam, and only 64% of students have mathematical proficiency. Now, towns like Glen Ridge, Livingston, North Valley, Chatham, Ridge, Northern Highlands, New Providence are all ahead of us. Now that we're almost back to normal, I urge you to start looking into long-standing problems affecting our schools. I'm almost done. At which point the math department will be held accountable for steadily decreasing results. I stood here 3 months ago and stated how abysmal is the number of students enrolled in AP math and science courses compared to neighboring districts. Maybe the track system and recommendations came the reason. At the very least, was it ever recognized as a problem? Ridgewood prides itself on a tradition. Maybe it's time to adopt a tradition how to be a learner, not rely on status quo, and rethink how we do things here, how we really treat our kids, and how we treat the trust parents place in our school system. Thank you, and thank you for letting me talk for extra 10 seconds.
Thank you.
And first, I want to say thank you for everything that you do. It's been a tough time. Thank you. And then I am here about the Later Start initiative. It's a cause whose time has come. It's just time to do it. Our kids are tired mentally, physically. This would be so helpful. The look on my high schooler's face when she realizes it's enrichment day tomorrow, you know, when it's Thursday and then it's Friday, to see her relief is big. This affects them in every way. So I appeal to you to do everything that you can to make this happen. For fall would be wonderful. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Brandon Sun. I live on 296 Masson Place, and I am currently a junior attending Ridgewood High School. It is my belief that what truly sets Ridgewood apart is, from its peers is its uniqueness. I can tell you that from a student perspective, there is no bigger pride I have than talking about enrichment days or our open campus policy to our friends out of district. And it is also my belief that out of any district in New Jersey, it is Ridgewood that is more than capable to pioneer this growing movement of later school start time. I simply cannot emphasize enough how the contrast between a regular day and a non-enrichment day for me. As a student in multiple AP classes, it is so crucial that I try and pick up as much information to the best of my ability. However, it is exactly because of those classes and the workload they have that I find it so difficult to sleep at a reasonable time. If you have kids or high schoolers, I'm sure you've heard something similar to this. I know of countless 3 a.m. Panic study sessions for the multiple days, for the multiple exams I have the day after, particularly the days after the days leading up to a break. And those aforementioned enrichment days provides to me a rejuvenating break from the cycle. When I was a freshman, I never understood why those enrichment days existed. But now as a junior, I can personally tell you that these dates have proved invaluable. I can tell you how refreshing it is to actually being fully awake and aware of my statistics class, rather than having the double of having to learn hypothesis tests while also doing your best not to doze off. This movement is more than just a mere 45 minutes. This represents an invaluable recovery of lost learning, an opportunity to improve not just test scores, but mental health and student happiness in general. Funny story, me and my friends decided that it would be a pretty funny joke if we made an account called RHS Sleeping Students, where students could submit photos of themselves of other students sleeping in class, and it would be a good joke for everybody. Obviously, if these students didn't want their photo taken, we would take them down immediately. But generally, it was just such a great, it was a great joke and good laughs around until more and more photos started being submitted. Particularly on Mondays and days directly following a break, we found an incredibly high amount of students sleeping. And I think the most we had in one day was, I would say 19 or 20. Comparatively, this is not a great amount compared to the general student base, but the message is crystal clear. Speaking for my peers, every single student serves to benefit from something just as minuscule as a 45-minute delay. Every single student, from those taking 4 AP classes to the student athletes to aspiring entrepreneurs, will all thank all of you. I stand here before you to strongly urge you, please seriously consider this legislation and turn Ridgewood for better. I know this district is more than capable of, if any, of doing it. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Maria Walsh, and I live at 112 South Irving Street. I'm a junior at Ridgewood High School. I'm speaking today to demonstrate my support for the later school start times initiative for the 2022-2023 school year, because I believe that even a 45-minute delay in start time will have a positive impact on teens' mental health and performance in school. In elementary and middle school, I was never a student who really fell asleep in class. However, in high school, especially these past 2 years, I felt increasingly more fatigued and unable to perform to the best of my ability in class. Additionally, we have often had enrichment days during the pandemic where school starts at 8:45 instead of 7:45. My peers and I enjoy these days much more because of the extra sleep and comfort they give us. If our daily schedule was similar to that of enrichment days, I believe that teens would be more willing and able to participate in class and enjoy going to school. Thank you for your time.
We're going to take a break from any speakers at the floor, and I'm going to take some comments on the phone. Caller. The 610, the first caller. 470, I'm gonna get my eyes checked. Caller with 470, you're on with the board. Please unmute your phone.
Hi, my name is Lily Farhang, 85 North Pleasant Avenue. I'm calling to show my support for later school start. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next caller on the phone, Ms. Malone. You're on with the board. Please unmute your phone.
Good evening. My name is Ann Malone. I live at 134 Foster Terrace. I'm making this statement on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Ridgewood. The League of Women Voters supports the later school start time initiative for Ridgewood's high school and middle schools. The League's mission is twofold: to register voters and to encourage informed, active participation in government, which includes educating and engaging community members on a range of public policy issues at the local, state, and national level. Once we study an issue and form a consensus, we advocate for that position at the appropriate level of government. Several local leagues, including New Canaan, Connecticut, have studied the issue of adolescent sleep needs and later school start and have issued positions in favor of a start time of 8:30 a.m. in line with the recommendation of the American Academy of Pediatrics and other influential public health bodies. Our local league formed a consensus in favor of later start times as well. There have been discussions with stakeholders within the Ridgewood Public School District for over a decade to address teens' sleep needs. Earlier this year, the League of Women Voters of Ridgewood sponsored a webinar presentation featuring Dr. Ann Robinson and Mr. Jeff Nyus to help further engage our community on this important policy issue. As many of you know, teen sleep deprivation is a public health issue. Dr. Ann Robinson, a pediatrician and co-founder of the Smart Balance Initiative at RHS, has summarized the research. Due to a shift in circadian rhythm at puberty, teens have a difficult time falling asleep before 11 p.m. and waking before 8 a.m. The sleep cycle during the early morning hours includes rapid eye movement, REM sleep, which is critical for memory, consolidation, information processing, and dreams that help us process emotions. When teens miss out on this crucial early morning sleep, it has a negative impact on their academic performance, mental health, and overall well-being. The American Academy of Pediatrics and CDC have issued strong policy statements recommending that middle and high schools begin the school day no earlier than 8:30 a.m. California has enacted later school start times into law. In school districts that have implemented later school start times, students did not go to sleep later. Students did, in fact, get more sleep. In one study, when school start time shifted 1 hour later, car crash rates decreased by 16.5%. In October 21, the AAP, the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, and Children's Hospital Association declared a national emergency in child and adolescent mental health. Later school start is the single most impactful policy and critical proactive measure for improving mental health. The League of Women Voters strongly urges our district to prioritize students' health and well-being by initiating a later school start time of 8:30 a.m. for the 2022-2023 school year. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Caller with last three digits 176, you're on with the board. Please unmute your microphone. Hello, you're
Hi,
on.
my name is Jenna Benson, and I live at 117 John Street. I wanted to, as a student, voice my opinion about later school start times. Currently, I'm a junior at RHS, and when our next school year starts in September, I believe we should implement an 8:30 start time, 3:05 end time with no 90-minute periods. In classes since middle school, we've been taught that our teenage brains are not naturally wired to go to bed and wake up early. Yet, our entire academic careers at RHS, we have sat back and needed to disregard this fact, literally waking up before sunrise, depending on the time of year. I'm so glad to see later school start times on the agenda at this meeting and seriously hope it will be a reality in the school year to come. We pride ourselves as a district with a tradition of excellence, but part of maintaining excellence is having a willingness to progress with the times. Ridgewood has the opportunity to be one of the frontrunners for later school start times, taking into account the science backing this change as being beneficial to academic performance, as well as improving students' physical and mental health. Thank you.
Thank you. Caller with last three digits 406, please unmute your microphone. You're on with the board. Could you unmute your microphone, please?
Hello?
Caller. Yes, hello.
Hello? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Hi.
Hi, it's Deirdre Scally at 599 Heights Road. I just wanted to comment, actually not about start time. I wanted to comment on an earlier speaker who was giving you highlights with regards to what was happening at the Ridgewood High School. And I'm just a smidge disappointed that there's been no mention whatsoever of the very successful season at the ice hockey level. We had an amazing season this year. There's a varsity team and a JV team. They actually are a winter sport, and there's never been a mention of them. There's never been an announcement in the building. There's never been an Instagram to say come to support both teams. And I just wanted to highlight it. They won the Steve Jascott tournament this December. They also got to the quarterfinals of the New Jersey State Ice Hockey Championship. They had a varsity team posted a record of 14 wins, 7 losses, and 1 tie. The JV team had an amazing, successful year as well. We have 9 graduating seniors, where a few of them are actually going to go on and play club hockey in college. And I wanted to highlight that. Twice this season, members of our varsity ice hockey team were nominated by the New Jersey sports writers at the Bergen Record. They were for Stars of the Week, both 2 times this season. There was no mention of that anywhere this year within the building, and I wanted to highlight that. And the team and the organization of the Ridgewood Ice Hockey Foundation is really hoping once and for all they can be actually properly recognized as a varsity sport that competes at the state level. They compete against Northern Highlands. They compete of everyone and anywhere you can imagine. And they're a successful group of men and actually one girl on the team. They're really hoping that maybe next year someone would actually recognize them as a sport. They might be able to get some Instagram coverage, maybe a morning announcement, or maybe even people coming to visit them and watch them at the local rinks. I just wanted to highlight them as a winter sport. They were tremendously successful, and I'm really looking forward to next year them getting that proper recognition. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Caller with last four digits 145, please unmute your microphone. You're on with the board. Could you unmute your microphone? Caller with last four
Hello.
digits. Oh, hello.
Yep. Yeah, I'm here. My name is Stefan Kahandalinage. I'm at 109 Hope Street. I was going to give you a very long and rousing speech on my support of the later start time, but upon hearing the representative from the League of Women Voters, I've decided not to give you this speech and instead just say that I support everything that was said, and I agree wholeheartedly with a later start time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Caller with last four digits 661, you're on with the board. Please unmute your microphone. Hello, caller with last four digits 661. Please unmute your microphone.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi. Hi, everyone. This is Ashley Laub, 303 Westgate Road. First, I just want to really just thank, the board and Dr. Gorman, for the decision that was implemented today with mass choice. Just want to reiterate how wonderful it was to see all the kids with their smiling faces. And I can't see all of you right now. Unfortunately, I couldn't be there in person. But again, just want to thank you for all your work toward moving to that decision today. I'm just, listening in on this conversation about late start times, and I will admit, it is something that I need to educate myself more on. But, I would just want to understand, if we do move forward with, the 8:30 or whatever the timing is, how do we, and again, I'm not for or against, like I said, I really need to educate myself more, but how do we prepare our kids for the future? And I'm not trying to be funny about this at all, but, in corporate or, in whatever, a lot of jobs that, kids will move into post-college, there are things like 8 a.m. meetings. There are things that, kids need to be prepared for. And I'm not trying to be coy about that. I completely empathize with mental health, issues and things going on in the world and for individual people. But, I would have to assume that there would have to be some education around that for kids. And I don't know what that looks like, but, I think we need to also remember that we are preparing our future generations and our future workforce. And that's really important, and instilling things in our children, in terms of, what that looks like down the road. So, I'm not sure if there's anything that's been thought out about that, but, appreciate, this conversation, and not sure when a decision will be made, but thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. I'm now going to close the first public commenting period for those who have not had the opportunity to speak. There is a second part of the public comments near the end of this meeting. Thank you for all those who spoke. It's all yours.
Okay, moving along with the Auditors Report. We went out of order there a little bit, but I'm going to present for consideration the acceptance of the Audit Report for the 2020-2021 school year.
I move. I second.
Ms. Brogan,
Yes.
Mr. Mahmood. Yes. Mr. Donnie,
Yes.
Mr. Lembo,
Yes.
Ms. Clark.
Yes.
All right, Superintendent report. Today, the mask mandate expired for the Ridgewood Public Schools, and it went mask optional. It was almost about 2 full years since we had to close the schools at the end of this week. I think it was around the 13th or so, and at the beginning of this whole pandemic for all of us. I want to send out a big thank you to all the teachers, faculty, staff, and everybody everything they did when we were in a hybrid, when we were closed, when we were virtual, to make this whole thing work for the past 2 years. I'm very proud of what we accomplished and the education that we provided to the students. Also want to thank all the students and the parents for all their compliance and working with us during this most challenging time. While we'll be moving forward to a mask optional policy, we will still be vigilant in maintaining a healthy environment. Faculty, staff, and students will find their own comfort levels with mask wearing and distancing, and this will be adjusted over time. The New Jersey COVID-19 activity level report has our region in the low, which is green level, and the vaccination rate of our children is very high. This is all great news. As we move forward during this new phase, we will continue to work together with each other and all the students. And just a quick informal poll, talking to a lot of the principals today, about 10 to 20% of the faculty and students wore masks today. And I think Ms. Train was kind of verifying that a little bit. So people are still trying to figure out where it goes. And I know people are adjusting throughout the day depending on what is happening. So people that were not wearing masks that went into an assembly or something where there were a lot more people there, then they put the masks on. And I think you're going to see a lot of that going forward. But today went extremely well. We received a lot of positivity from a lot of the parents and students, and a lot of thumbs up about people just being able to see faces again. And I just want to read an email that went to, this actually happened on Friday, but this is an email that went to the principal of Willard, Ms. Hoffman, and it kind of just summarizes a lot of what the parents have been feeling. And this parent wrote, "I'm crying in tears of joy after watching the video that they put out about the anticipation of us going mask optional today, that their son was watching as well, and he was very excited to watch it actually again. Thank you from the bottom of all our hearts for all that you do for the students of Willard. What a challenging past 2 years it has been. We are so thankful for the positive experience that my son and we have had since the start of Willard in 2020. We are optimistic as we move forward and start this new chapter for my son, and it's his first time in Willard without a mask. And we saw a lot of the same kind of commenting on that stuff to us. Pleased to see that. But we will be vigilant moving forward, and we'll be keeping an eye on the COVID index levels and seeing if we have to adjust anything. We updated our website. We put a frequently asked questions out there to try to help with a lot of the things, and we'll be continually monitoring the situation. So it was a great first day, and that's my report.
So thank you for that report. I just want to add that we are not declaring a victory or end of that when we are thinking for last 2 years. It's ongoing. And if any students are not comfortable and they still want to wear the mask, they are welcome to wear the mask.
Absolutely. And what was so great about those elementary videos was that they actually have put students in scenarios about what do you do? How do you talk about this? And they help students see how they get answer a lot of the questions if I'm wearing a mask or you're not wearing a mask, and how to be tolerant of each other. And I think our students are, we have, they do that with any kind of, cultural issues that are going on or talking about students. I think it's a great dialogue. But we're not declaring an end to COVID. And we are very aware that this is real and there could be new variants coming. Absolutely.
I just realized this is our first meeting without masks. Awesome.
Right.
And it's really great to see everybody's faces. Just like Mr. Donnie was saying, though, this doesn't end anything. I think this now makes us more vigilant on washing our hands and making sure that other precautions. But I'm really happy that finally the law caught up with science. Yeah, right. You're correct. To make sure that you. Yeah. So
So we're going to move on to the consent items. A, attendance at conferences. I present for consideration.
Ms. Brogan.
Yes.
Mr. Mahmood. Yes. Mr. Donnie.
Yes.
Mr. Lembo.
Yes.
Ms. Clark.
Yes.
I present for consideration B, administration.
I move B. I'd also just like to thank Jet and the calendar committee. School calendar. Like it meets all the requirements. I second.
Ms. Brogan.
Yes.
Mr. Mahmood.
Yes.
Mr. Donnie.
Yes.
Mr. Lembo.
Yes.
Ms. Clark.
Yes.
Present for consideration C, curriculum instruction.
I move C. I second.
Ms. Brogan.
Yes.
Mr. Mahmood.
Yes.
Mr. Donnie.
Abstain.
Mr. Lembo.
Yes.
Ms. Clark.
Yes.
For human resources on page 8, as I spoke earlier, Ms. Spino, we're just going to take out the replacement on the second line there, or she's not a replacement resource teacher, and that will be corrected tomorrow. But otherwise, I'm going to present for consideration D, human resources.
I'll move that.
I second.
Great seeing everybody.
Ms. Brogan.
Yes.
Mr. Mahmood.
Yes.
Mr. Donnie.
Yes.
Mr. Lembo.
Yes.
Ms. Clark.
Yes.
Moving to page 10, I'm going to present for consideration E, finance.
I move finance.
I have a question on finance. We had the joint agreement, transportation agreement with Bergen.
Right.
One of them, the amendment or was tabled to like at the last meeting. So is it coming back or?
I've had no word from South Bergen Jointer on that amendment. I'm still waiting for reply back.
But the good news is it's not holding us up with anything, but
Correct.
Mr. Bice is
Correct.
going to work on that. Yeah.
Also, another question is, that's including now the waste management. No, waste management is separate.
That's,
nine.
yeah,
No,
that's
that's a
under.
It's on page 13. It's
yeah.
it's pulled out as a consent item.
Yeah, so that.
We'll vote separately on the non-consent. I move E, finance.
Ms. Brogan.
I think you seconded. Yeah. You moved. I second. Yes.
Mr. Mahmood. Mr. Donnie.
Yes.
Mr. Lembo.
Yes.
Ms. Clark.
Yes, and I want to recognize the very generous donors, the Korean Parents Association for $2,000, the Ridgewood High School Student Activity Account of $249 gift in kind, the Ridgewood High School Student Activity Account for $4,570.56, the Learning Services Home and School Association of $345, Ridgewood High School HSA for $7,791.96, and Learning Services HSA for $345. Thank you so much for your generosity.
That's great. On the bottom of page 12, I present for consideration the resolutions and motions not included. So we're going to do A, agreement with Amerex brokers.
I move.
Second it. So can I ask to explain what is this agreement about? Like what are we agreeing to do?
Sure.
I laid out the last three FYIs, kind of the background on Aramex, but basically we're based on the expertise from Aramark and their engineering staff, recommending that we change the current energy broker for electricity to get a better price and cheaper broker going forward. We go out to bid for the electric costs. So Aramark Airmarks has been put on the agenda for approval, so I can get them moving, because right now it's open season for bidding for electricity.
Okay, so where we say that they have a relationship or they have partnered with Airmark for a while, how does Airmark come in picture for us?
Airmax has been working with Airmark for the last 15 years on other districts they work with to help reduce energy costs going out to bid. Based on that, I felt their expertise, since you brought them in the district to help us out to reduce costs and streamline the process, is beneficial. And they said changing the broker is cheaper, and they're hopefully going to get us a better rate going out to bid.
So they are, Airmark is just providing a referral that, hey, we have seen them, they are good at other district, but there's no, or is there, because the link that you sent to us, it shows a partnership with Airmark and it shows that they have access to dashboards or other stuff. So what happens, the Airmark's contract is on a different date. So when that comes up for renewal, we may go with a different custodial contract. So I'm trying to understand, is there any dependency between the electrical brokerage and Airmark? What is the relationship there, or is it just a referral?
It's just an outside company they've used in other districts to help broker the electric RFPs, and they recommend, based on the conversations and web pages and the Zoom conferences, to go along with them, because they can hopefully reduce our costs going out for RFP, and plus they're cheaper than the current broker.
Okay, so the electricity still comes from PSE&G.
Correct.
Correct. So they are just getting the prices in an open market where multiple people will be bidding for those contracts, and we'll buy a contract, or with somebody we'll agree for a pricing, and there will be certain term of that. So why does a broker matter in that case? Like, what is this? What do they do differently?
The broker can help reduce some of the overall energy costs that we pay coming into the state from PSE&G. So it's kind of an
Right, but
intermediary.
isn't the market, like, is it specific negotiated market, or is it an open market where any broker can go and get the price?
But I've been told it's kind of an open market, so you can go in and RFP, negotiate a price, and then have that run down through Jersey. We'll see. And if we don't agree with the price they come with, we just decline it. I don't have to take it.
Oh, just to make sure, Aramark is, Amarex has no formal relationship with Aramark, whether it be maybe some joint equity or ownership structure.
That's
or
correct.
They are completely two separate companies.
Correct. They've just used Airmax over the last 15 years to help broker other electrical contracts they've done to their energy side of the house.
So there's no additional cost for the service. Once we approve this, the board, if the board approves this and Amarex Brokers goes out and finds a more favorable rate, then does it come back to the board, we approve it, or what's that process?
I put into your emails today another backup based on the last 3 FYIs I've done. The current company charges $7,000 annual fee. Airmarks is $3,150. So it's a cheaper cost to go out to broker for the annual fee if we change who we use.
Right, but then the resolution should not say, the resolution is worded as agreement. It's a letter of representation.
Correct, because they have to represent us on the open market. So you'd be dropping the one, taking on Airmax.
Right, but we are not approving, or we have not seen the whole agreement. We are seeing a letter of representation. We have not seen in the background information any agreement. What will be our agreement with them, the details of the terms and conditions. And here it says there are no additional costs for this service. And the revised email says there's a cost. And I think the most important part for me is I've seen this process unfolding at Village Council and at Glenrock Village Council, where they have gone to an outside vendor other than PSE&G, where the rationale was that we should go out and buy or pay for clean energy, not just the pricing. So when we get the electricity from PSE&G, it has X% of clean energy and then 5% of not so clean energy. And you can go into the open market and you can negotiate or buy on that spot market more percent of clean energy. And that's where I think our town is spending money, that it will be mandated for all, or every household will be opted in for that everybody will be opted in for more cleaner energy. And same thing Glenrock did a couple of years ago, 3 years ago. So if we are going for somebody other than PSE&G, either we need to know how much are we saving, what's the substantial saving over PSE&G, the pricing PSE&G versus what they're offering.
You won't know until they go out to the open market and bid on it.
Right, but we need to know what are their. I've seen this process at the council. They came and they provided the parameters that what is from their experience, what can we expect, and what would be the ratio of clean. So if we are going out to a vendor because of cleaner energy, I'm all for it. But if you're just changing because our current vendor is recommending change, like did we have a bad experience with the current vendor or why?
Well, the current vendor is more expensive and their contract ends the end of May. So now's the time to go out and make a change if you're going to change vendors to get a better price point on the open market when they go out to bid. And so based on the conversation with Airmark over the last 15 years, Aramex has been very strong in the open market to get the companies they deal with the best rate. That's why we recommend.
So that's what I'm not understanding. So is it negotiated is the broker negotiating?
Yes.
They are not going to the open market?
They're going to open market to negotiate the best price. How that works on their end, I'm not fully sure how they do it on that end, but they're going out on our behalf to negotiate a better rate for electric.
Because what I remember from the presentation at the village council was that once we gave them a go ahead, they said we'll go on a specific date and then whatever is the rate on that date. So this open negotiation process, like I'm not seeing the agreement or the details or this even the pricing that you mentioned. They will do for us. I've not seen the document of what all will they do for us to vote.
Okay, well, I can call out to Aramex, see if I get some backup, more material you need, but the window is closing because in May, the current contract runs out. So you might miss the window to get the best price.
So on
based
that
on what's
count,
going on with the economy, it could be cost us more 2 months from now.
Yeah, but right. And on that part, sorry, Mohammed, on that part, I have raised this multiple times that we should not be getting information at the last minute with the argument that if you don't act now, then we'll.
This was given out at 3 different FYIs over the last month.
Right, but
I didn't know that
just has a
the
presentation.
Yeah, I
It
didn't know
doesn't say-
that
it
the
did not say
current.
that it's coming to a vote at this one. And I found out.
Well,
afterwards.
I don't know, but I didn't realize that the current contract actually ends in May.
Right, it doesn't, all it said that Aramark has recommended this vendor, we are talking to them. There was no other information. We had facilities committee meeting. It should have been brought to the facilities committee.
It's a
meeting.
finance issue.
So then it should have been brought to finance meeting.
I discussed it to the whole board in FYI instead to get you all alert of it in the last 3 FYI. So it's been out there for a month.
I beg
And
to
if you
differ
want,
on that.
I caught the meetings in the backup I sent you. It was February 18th, March 3rd, and again, the last one on March 7th.
Right, so you
And I sent you
mentioned
the
that you're
handout
working with a vendor.
and you got the website for the backup. Plus I sent you verbiage on what Aramex was telling us through Airmark on how well they do. And
But just to clarify, I mean, we're not voting to change any energy contract here, right, Scott? All we're doing is we're voting to authorize them as a broker.
Correct.
And once they have their findings and their due diligence, they'll present back to us what their recommendations is, or to the facilities committee or whatever. And at that point, there's a decision to be made, right? So all we're doing right now is changing brokers, potentially changing brokers on the recommendation of our facilities company, right, which has been managing all of our facilities for 15 years.
That's correct.
But we have, it says the board has received background information and we do not have the broker's contract. Like we don't have the information, any T&Cs, we haven't seen anything.
I saw it in the FYI, but I don't remember.
It's a presentation.
Yeah,
It's
I
a
don't
presentation.
remember a date. I don't remember.
Would it be helpful if, and I don't know if it's possible, if there was a representative from Aramex who came to our next board meeting?
I can see if I can have them be here in person.
you
or
could
Zoom in,
actually
either
ask
way.
your
Yes, I can
questions.
have that. I can arrange that probably.
But my biggest thing I want to understand is the price difference in going with cleaner option, or what are they negotiating? What type of energy are we getting? Because it's not the different energy doesn't come on the wire. It's the money that you pay at the exchange, and in a hope that that money will promote more clean energy.
But do you think they'll have answers for us if we haven't even authorized them as a broker? That's just what I'm wondering. Like,
Yeah,
it's like a $3,000 fee, you know what I mean? So is he gonna come really give us a true answer if he hasn't, or if they haven't done the true research for us?
So that's my other question. Why would a company be working on $1 million energy contract for a $3,000 fee? So I want to understand how, like, what else are they doing, and why only for $3,000? So I want to understand the whole terms and condition or the contract. That what are they providing for $3,000? It's a lot of work to just do for $3,000.
So we'll try and set that up for you. So I guess you're gonna want to withdraw this.
You can table it, that's fine.
Yeah. I move to, well, we have a.
All the motions there. So
Yeah.
Sheila, you made the motion. If you want to
Yep.
table it.
If you want to table it.
We can table it.
All right, then I present for consideration B, agreement with Interstate Waste Management Services.
I move agreement with Interstate Waste Management Service.
There's no second, so it fails. Do you want to?
Yeah, there's no
Yeah.
second.
There's no second, right?
No.
Okay.
So we're gonna go out for another one when the gas prices are just going through the roof.
No, Ms. Brogan, what this allows is it allows the business office to negotiate.
I understand that.
Yeah, since the contract was denied, I'll put on the next agenda the resolution to authorize me to contact IWS to negotiate, hopefully a better price.
I don't think you need the resolution to authorize.
you
I
need-
thought that
No, you need a
the
resolution.
lawyer said, then why don't we make the resolution now? I make the resolution to authorize the business office to negotiate for waste management services for refuse and commingling removal service.
I second.
Ms. Brogan,
Yes.
Mr. Mahmood,
Yes.
Mr. Donnie,
Yes.
Mr. Lembo,
Yes.
Ms. Clark.
Yes.
Yes. I approve, I checked all the bills. There was a lot. I went through them. They all look like they're in order, so I submit all the bills with my name on it for consideration.
I second.
Ms. Brogan,
Yes.
Mr. Mahmood,
Yes.
Mr. Donnie,
Yes.
Mr. Lembo,
Yes.
Ms. Clark.
Yes. Okay, board member announcements.
I'd just like to congratulate Jamboree. They raised, as of Saturday night, over $250,000 in
Amazing.
scholarships for our students. So congratulations. It was a wonderful show. Audience came very excited. Sort of going back to normal. So it was nice. Good for them. Here's your late start article of the week. That was it.
Thank you, Mr. Donnie. Do you have anything?
I do. I do want to, echo Ms. Brogan's. The Jamboree was great. It was also great seeing the board there. It was a good time. I think the parents did an excellent job. They raised a lot of money for the scholarships. I think they did a great job. Hats off to them. Now I feel like every weekend there's going to be a show. So good thing we're meeting every week. So I can just say the next one. So this weekend is Dad's Night, and I think the talent is maybe just slightly below Jamboree, but I think they're doing a great job. The dads have been getting together for the last few months, and it's gonna be a great show. The chairman, Steve Reagans and Brian Giamella, and the theme, but it's really kind of a talent show, just like the Jambies with Jamboree, but it's Honey, I Shrunk Dad's Night. Friday is 7 p.m. and there's a Saturday at 2 p.m. show. The show is free, so bring the kids. On Friday, it starts at 7, but at 6 o'clock in front of BF, there's going to be a very special guest. So I'm sure your kids will want to see that. But it's the longest running show in Ridgewood. It's the 78th year. And I don't know if you remember, but last year was the first in-person event. So it's been in person every year, even through COVID. They were able to have it outside. So it's great. Actually, it was funny. Caller did bring it up. I wanted to kind of talk about hockey. So I didn't realize that she was going to call, but I spoke with Mr. Crunk and the hockey team this weekend, and I think they did do a great job. We have to learn to beat Ridge, because that's the one team that keeps knocking us out of the playoffs. But they did an excellent job even through COVID. And one of the things that the hockey team was doing, and unfortunately they had to cancel it, but they do a lot of outreach with the younger kids, and they did a pizza party, and they're going to have the kids meet all the players. So I encourage a lot, especially the younger parents, to take their kids to go to the hockey games. They're super cheap. The high school kids love it, and the younger kids really love seeing, hockey up close. So it's a great experience. So I didn't realize that someone was going to call in, but I want to say that they did a great job. Also tonight, I know Ms. Train brought up the Ridgewood Hackensack basketball game that was sold out, which is amazing that, we're having to unfortunately turn people away. I know some of the local restaurants like Park West was going to live stream it too, so parents could go and watch, because they're great games, and it's great to see the community coming out for our teams. So I'm looking forward to spring and seeing all the great stuff. So again, Dad's Night, come check us out on this weekend, and hats off to everybody. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just want to, my only comment is I want to reiterate that today is the first day of mask optional. Whatever your decision is, we as a district, we respect, support, and honor your choice. Thank you. Okay, next, board committee reports. No. Okay, we're going to go right to the discussion items on alternative school start schedules.
So I do have a question. I don't know if maybe they'll start us off. Dr. Gorman, we had our last group meeting, about a month ago, not even. So what's next? What's next?
That's what we're going to just discuss a little bit tonight. So
Right.
I don't want to preempt that yet until we talk a little bit.
Oh,
But
sorry.
so I just want to go back to where we were in December. Ms. Polstra and I did a presentation to the community at BF, and we put all the facts out there and how we wanted to move forward with the survey. There were a number of questions that were out there about people needing to be more educated on the issues. So the board asked me to table the survey at that moment, and I think that was in January, or maybe that was the end of December. And then we had to revisit it. Then we met with the alternate schedules committee. I think it was sometime in January or something like that. And we met and talked about this, about what the issues were that the community was talking about. It definitely came back to, we need to educate people more, have them understand more of the issues. And then some people were throwing out different things that maybe we could consider. And you heard some of them tonight. So that's where we're at right now. And as a board, we need to talk about this and decide how we're going to move forward.
So I want to, first of all, thanks for everybody that spoke here in person and on the virtual stream for all your thoughts. I want to just summarize some information that the Smart Balance team sent us via email January 21st, just to add a little bit more information out there to the public, to remind our fellow board members, since this is all public information, right? Our emails is public anyway. So I think they did a great job summarizing a lot of other district data for us. It's actually one of the best summaries of information I've seen. I have not verified the information myself. I just want to give some highlights from what they put together for us to consider. They summarized about 30 districts' data around how they're ranked, SAT score ranks, and then how their total cumulative educational time looks like. So of about 30, just to give you some ideas, kind of who we're comparing against. We're comparing against Princeton, Glen Ridge, Livingston, West Windsor, Tenafly, Chatham, Northern Highlands. So according to US News and World Report, we rank just about in the middle of those. So we're about number 18, again, according to the data that they sent. Yet we have the 5th longest amount of minutes of instructional time, right? So I think the data is pretty compelling that instructional time does not link necessarily to performance and rankings. So again, they've got US News and World Ranking here. They've got the niche ratings. They've got SAT scores. Again, it's public information, so we can share it with everybody. So my recommendation is, again, I think we all want to do this. It's about getting there. My recommendation would be for Tom and the team to really come forward with what does that proposal look like? And then we have to take a decision at the board level, or maybe it goes out to a community vote, or maybe it's just a board decision. I don't know. But I think it should be, hey, here's what it would look like if we went with it, or do we stay as normal and take the decision?
Well, I agree. I think that's one of the things that came out in the December meeting was we need like a plan to look at that we can actually either agree or not agree on. One of the things I know for myself was, and I know some of the speakers spoke today, and we've got a lot of emails, is I'm a little hesitant with the elementary school. That was for me. When we were looking at it, it was presented. I know we're talking about later start, but I know with transportation is difficult, but if we are talking about in those presentations, moving the elementary schools to an earlier time, which I think kind of almost contradicted what we're trying to do here. So I think someone brought it up tonight saying maybe just middle school and high school then, if that's possible, though. I don't even know if that's possible with the transportation costs, and that might be a logistical nightmare.
So at the last meeting, or not last meeting, but when around December, we approved a firm for survey, right? We approved some money for survey. Did that survey ever? So there was a design of survey, and we said that survey did not have the options that we were actually going to implement, or we were talking about implementing. And we said we'll go back and revisit the survey. So what did that happen? Do we have?
Yeah, so we showed the survey to the administrators again, and this alternate schools committee that we had, and they looked at it. Most of the questions were valid, what we're trying to accomplish and trying to figure out. But then all these issues came up, and we have to really try to figure out what we want to do. So that's where we're at right now.
Okay. And then, so
sorry, just to add a comment to what you said, I think the main issue from the survey was there was an assumption that we don't want to reduce instructional time. So we would have to extend the day, make elementary school earlier, and that seemed to be a very big turnoff to people right from the start. So I think that was one thing we were trying to solve.
Right. So that's where I was just doing some back of the envelope numbers when we had public comments, and my numbers may be wrong. So let me know. So we are being asked to delay the start time by 45 minutes from 7:45 to 8:30. If we have 180 days of instruction time in a year, that's 8,100 minutes or 135 hours. So if we are saying a typical day, 7-hour day from 7:45 to 2:45, it's 19 days or 4 weeks actually. So 19 days is 4 weeks of time. So how will we compensate for 4 weeks of time if we only change the start time?
So you're assuming no later end time. I think some of the thoughts were that you would have to adjust a little bit of a later end time, maybe not exactly equal, but what does that amount look like?
So how much would that be? So that's
I mean, that's why I think we need a comprehensive plan to look at. This is my opinion.
Because one of the comments I heard was that that 90 minutes, 80 minutes periods are not no starters, and which was the suggestion to keep this no loss of instruction time, and also that 3:30 end time is objected. So if you are only moving on one direction and if you are not going on the other direction, how much are we adjusting and how? So instead of 4 weeks, how many days of instruction time are we losing and how will we compensate that?
Well,
so one of the questions was to survey the teachers that will they be, because I'm seeing some of the classes right now, the AP exams are in May, not in June, right? Our school ends in June, but AP exams are in May. And some of the AP classes, they are doing revisions or they are preparing for the AP exam, and some of will teach until the last day. And so if we are reducing 4 weeks, how will those teachers make up? So have we done any survey from those teachers and identified what is our plan?
Well, this could be wrapped up into maybe the calendar discussion instead of starting in September. Can you try and push some of those days earlier into the summer so you don't lose instructional time? You still have the students prepared for the AP exams. So that's one idea, because I think especially coming out of a pandemic, I would conjecture that more instructional time is needed. That's why we are actually putting funds towards support after school. This isn't really a time to cut instructional time from my perspective. So maybe starting the school year earlier. We can't certainly end any later. We end quite late as it is. So can we start the school year earlier for parents with children who participate in sports? They are already here because sports practices start in August anyway. So that's one. I just throw it out there as an option. I do want to make mention of the fact that an 8:30 start time for a lot of working parents, it's very difficult to manage that schedule because the expectation for most offices, I started much earlier, but it would be difficult for a segment of the community, and I don't want to lose sight of that. There's travel time involved, there's childcare issues involved, and 8:30 can be a very hectic period if it goes that route.
But I think we have to be careful to, with all my respect to both of what you said, but those are your personal opinions. And I think the only thing I've seen that's been data is the information that the Smart Balance team sent us, where they compiled again about 30 districts, 17, we're about in the middle, right, of these 30 districts in terms of rankings, yet we have the 5th highest number minutes.
We have 580 districts in New Jersey.
Yeah, so
we're
let's
pretty.
let's
Look at all of them, how much instruction time they have, and what's the ones that they have more. And all I'm saying is, like, when any group is coming to us and saying start time before 8:30 is not negotiable, we should really think hard that we should not just we should like maybe find a compromise where if instead of 45-minute delay, what if there's a half an hour delay, and then at the end instead of 30 minutes we are going 20 minutes, and then 1 week we are starting in August, so that if we find some sort of compromise and cutting something on the instruction minute, then it's fine. But that before 8:30 is not negotiable and you have 4 weeks is okay, that I find that difficult to
and I'm not, by the way, I'm not advocating to take a decision. I don't want my personal opinion to be a decision for the district, but what I would like to ask is for Tom to come forward with a proposed plan. And I agree with Hanju also, there may be a lot of parents that might have issues with the later start, but the only way we'll know is if we have a proposed plan and we put it to a vote to the parents and say, hey, here's where we're currently at. Here's the proposed later start.
I just vote will be have to be a referendum.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I mean a survey. I'm sorry. I mean a parent survey to see what they think, and then that becomes an input into the decision making.
And I just have to caution the board about a proposed plan. I mean, we haven't surveyed any of the parents. I don't know. There could be busing issues. We've already heard, that could be 100,000 or more. You've got contractual issues that depending on what you're going to shave. So if you just shave off those minutes, then you have to go back and figure out what are you going to be doing with the teachers. So just for me to come up with a plan, there's a lot of other layers to this that, and still the public, the one thing that we heard was a lot of the public are not educated enough on this topic. So we have to consistently educate them before we put out the survey to get their information. And one example is, could we put middle schoolers and high schoolers on the same bus to figure that out, help that? I don't know if the parents want that or not. We haven't surveyed them.
But Tom, I'm just worried that we're gonna, it's, analysis paralysis. We'll keep talking about these issues for years and I don't feel, and I'm not saying we should do it. I'm just saying at least we should present something to the community that's asking us, that's been asking for years. And then we take a decision. Is it a yes or a no?
Well, I think that's exactly.
I think as I sit here and have listened to the high school parents over the years, the one thing I think we need to ground ourselves in as a board is, do we support the concept of a later start time? All the devils are in the detail, but is that something that we value? If that's something we value, then we go ahead and ask Tom and Stacy to begin a plan, put that plan in place. And, educating parents is a huge one. Surveying our parent population, understanding the schedule. And do we leave, elementary school alone at this point? Can we? And only really look towards middle and high school. But I think the first thing do we value that? Do we value what we've been hearing and what we've been reading?
I mean,
I think we all
pretty
value that.
obvious. We have that with what we've been talking about, and I think we do.
Right,
I would-
and to Mike's point, we value that, and I think Ms. Bolster presented a specific plan where there were criteria of or requirements, the way she laid out, no instructional time reduction and all of the criteria, and there was plan, but then we are being told that, okay, 90 minutes is no start, this end time is no start. So we can't have a parent group dictating us all the terms and conditions. And if we are not going to follow all of their conditions, then if we are being treated as do we really want it or not? I think that's in general.
But if we don't want to, and I agree with that, sir, we should not have a parent group dictating what we should be doing, but the alternative is we should be asking our professionals, Tom and team, what do you recommend?
They came up with a plan.
Right, exactly. What is the plan?
And then that parent group came and said, this is not acceptable.
No, but there was no plan yet, Sarah.
There was.
No,
there were 4 options.
There was options. There was options. They're not one.
But but that survey, unfortunately, had a lot of assumptions. Immediately, those assumptions were making the survey unfeasible to everybody. That was the issue with. So if we want to have a survey, we should have it without any assumptions, right? To gather the important kind of free market.
So then we should not be questioning whether the board is serious or not. That's my point.
Right.
No,
right? That is ingenuous. When you're on the committee, so what has the committee come up with? What is the plan?
Well, we met in January with what, 40?
Yeah, so can I just maybe just share a little
Yeah.
perspective? The survey was intended to gather input from our community about all of these issues. So, there was a section where, what are your concerns and what would be your top concerns if there was a change in start times? So it was everything from my family, time with my family, getting to work on time, childcare issues, transportation. So that was going to be one segment of the survey where we were going to say to people, what would you prioritize? What are your big concerns if we make this shift? The other part of us putting possibilities out there that people came back and before they even had a chance to take the survey said we're non-starters, right? Was a little problematic also. So the idea of this survey was to get the pulse of what people's concerns were, and then to take that back and decide what the next course of action would be. I think people had a very quick knee-jerk reaction that this survey is having me make a choice right now, and whatever I say on the survey is like a vote. And that was never the intention of the survey, and hence why we wanted to do it earlier this year. And so we wanted to put that survey in place, not as a choice. Yes, we put some options out there, and I think people would have come back and would have said, if we saw a ton of people saying, we're not really in favor of 90 minutes, we could have said, okay, then we'll look at something else. But the feedback that, we kind of read was, we're not even ready to give this survey yet because people think they're choosing something and they're really not. They're giving us information so we can determine next steps. There are a few non-negotiables. There are some things that are very challenging. So talking about not changing the elementary time, you can't have everybody start within a 15-minute range. It's just impossible, with our busing routes, with parents who have kids at multiple schools. So there has to be some give and take, but we could have, looking at the information people gave us, we could have prioritized a little bit what seemed to be people's biggest concerns. What do they really like here? What do they not really like here? However, after we did the presentation, people came back very strongly, and it was clear that people either needed more information to really understand what the survey was about. We had very few questions that came from the elementary HSAs when we asked for questions, which says to me, I'm not so confident that our elementary parents really understand that this could impact their child's day. So it is incumbent upon us to continue to share more information, because even though there's a core group of people who are very well informed and very passionate about this issue and have followed the research and all of that, it looks like there's a very large sector of our community who would be quite surprised by the changes that we're talking about making. And the last piece around instructional time, keeping the instructional time consistent in a lot of ways would have made the transition to a new schedule smoother. Because once, and we've had this conversation at the committee level, once you decide to start chopping off instructional time, it becomes how much is too much, how much is appropriate, how much is really okay. And I think, again, that would go back to, in that survey that we would have sent out, we had a staff survey, we had a parent survey, we had a community member survey. Even if people didn't have kids, we would have gotten a sense of, okay, where are we? What do people think? And use that to inform next steps. To Dr. Gorman's point, it's really hard to put a specific plan on the table when we haven't gotten feedback from people about what their concerns and priorities are for their own families and their own kids. So kind of putting the survey on hold and asking for more input from the committee to see, okay, what you've given us, is that in the survey already? Did we include everything that was there? Perhaps that was a great extra step, but we also do feel that they're, going through this, that we do have to do some additional education. So, we are working with Judith Owens right now, who is a sleep expert, to come in and do a presentation for our district as part of our well-being speaker series. I'm not sure the date of that. We're in the final throes of trying to iron out the details. And making sure that people really do understand that we're having very serious discussions about this, and, trying to get a survey out in some ways after people are even aware. You don't want to blindside people. The survey shows up in your inbox and they're like, what, you're changing the schedule? So again, it continues to be a little bit of a challenging time under which to make these big type of systemic changes. But hopefully now that we're getting, back to the green zone, we'll be able to dedicate more energy towards putting this in front of people in a way that they can focus on it now that some other things are going a little bit smoother.
But I think, Stacy, what I'd say there, I disagree a little bit with you because I think I'm all for surveying the parents to get an idea of their preferences, but I saw that last proposed survey. I don't think it would have achieved that. I think that survey had a lot of assumptions built in that was not gonna get you accurate data. It's kind of like you get a survey.
K-12
so let-
Insight survey?
What is it?
The K-12 Insight survey?
The parent survey that Tom had presented at BF that day, the proposed survey that he presented in the public meeting in December. Let me give you a simple.
But there was that, we only showed the options that night. We didn't show the survey that night, but there's the whole series
We
of
haven't-
questions
We
around.
haven't
talking
seen the
about-
survey.
I'm
Yeah.
talking about the survey that the proposed survey questions that Tom presented at the BF meeting. I think it was in December or so.
It's like one or two examples. I mean, there
It was
was,
a survey. It was
Yeah.
just like proposals, like
I-
possibilities.
I saw questions on there, questions.
yeah, but we
of-
just gave like,
Well-
yeah, we haven't shared the survey questions with, so,
Tom, you presented questions in that meeting, right?
just like one or two. I mean, we have 30 something questions,
Yeah,
so
there's
it's
like-
just.
And because I think that's what caused what you call the knee-jerk reaction, right?
Yeah.
People were, it's like you present a survey and ask somebody, a right way to present a survey saying, do you like soccer, do you like basketball, or do you like baseball? You get an idea, right? But if you say, hey, do you like soccer, do you like basketball, do you like baseball with one arm tied behind your back? Now I'm gonna think about it, right? I'm not sure if I really like baseball or basketball better if you're restricting me. And that's what those questions were doing. We were basically telling parents, will you take a later start time and take an early elementary school time, which is what Mike talked about earlier. Like, to me, that's a little bit of a turnoff too, personally. Or are you going to take a later start time and a later end time and then make the classes much longer?
Right.
That's also, to me personally, a little bit of a turnoff. So that's
No,
what I'm
it's-
saying. If we want to pull the parents, we should do it in an authentic way. That's really, we're getting the true data and not based on a lot of assumptions where we're not going to
Well,
get the data.
I totally understand what you're saying, but I mean, we have to work off some assumptions. So I don't know where to start then unless this board decides that, hey, here are the parameters and these are the non-negotiables. When we heard tonight that 90 minutes is not negotiable, but there's thousands of schools across the country that do 90-minute schedules. So it's, we have to figure out what would work, for us. And honestly, and if this is, let's just say a hot topic, maybe we need to bring in like focus group experts to really start talking to the different segments of the population along with the survey, which maybe is where we're at right now, to try and get a lot of feedback from the people so that we can help move forward. That is definitely a suggestion of mine.
So the survey was put on pause because it would have been, first of all, nobody had seen the survey. So there was some questions on how it was fashioned, not to say that it wasn't fashioned appropriately. The timing was an issue because people had a very short turnaround in the middle of December, holiday season. I just didn't think that the response rate would be fair and accurate. So now that you've had meetings, we've had discussions, there's been some feedback. It's narrow because again, it's the people who have been following it for a consistent time. I don't know what the community is like. And that's, I think, where the committee is at, that it's hard to move forward unless you really understand what are the real constraints. And I think that if the committee has a survey that has been modified, reflecting some of the preliminary feedback, would you be able to send the survey out? Because sometimes with the caveat that the survey is simply to gather information. These are not real options, but some of the questions reflect the reality, the challenges, the constraints of implementing late start, which theoretically sounds great, but the devil is really in the details. And so if you send out the survey and give the community, the broad community, ample time to respond, I think that would be a very valuable starting point to get a real, so you can move forward.
And one example is, I just heard it twice tonight. I mean, are we eliminating the K through 5s out of that equation, which then changes some things for us too. So like, things are changing as we're talking. So, we have
Right,
to
so
figure this out.
I would urge the committee to, if you have a survey that you were ready to put in December, it sounds like there's been some feedback, maybe modify it if you could give, and I think sometimes the survey, just sending it out would be part of the educational process to let the community know we are thinking about this so that they don't have to watch every meeting and say, oh, so.
Well, and also, it's kind of a chicken or the egg thing, right? Like we want to move forward with a plan, but we also need input.
Right.
So, we just really want to emphasize to people that, as we put the survey, we worked with K-12 Insight. We used a professional organization that does this type of work. We feel like they've given us good guidance. They've worked with our admin team on a few different occasions. They've shared samples that they've used in other places. And it is really for input. It is not a one and done, and it's like a vote. I think, whatever we can do to kind of break down that, that misunderstanding, that, we might see patterns come through in the data that we didn't anticipate. Maybe the childcare issue for elementary parents will raise to a level that makes us say, oh, wait, we're going to have to shift our thinking a little bit because this came across as a big concern. So it really, the survey that we intended to send after that presentation, we had concerns and as all of you did as well, because we felt like we needed to do more education. We need people to understand that it's really, maybe there is a way to do it just 6-12. But again, if we would have to look at what elementary parent feedback is, or, what we could work out logistically, or maybe there's, we would have a lot of elementary parents who said, we would love to do the flip and start earlier, so we're kind of at a point where we need to gather some of that input in order to be able to say what the next step is,
So
without people thinking it's a one and done.
Don't
So
you
I
think
like-
we need to have I think we should have Dr. Owens come first.
Yes,
to
in
ground,
conjunction.
to ground this.
Yes.
And then move forward with the survey.
Yeah, I think that they're,
So we've amassed a lot of, you've given us homework every single time, but we also have the broadcast that was mentioned tonight, Dr. Ann Robinson, along with Mr. Nias and others. So we're thinking about educating a little bit as we go along, bring in the presenter, get some more questions going, meet with the committee, and then maybe send it out when more people are a little bit more informed of the topic. And maybe they'll be able to focus on this a little bit more now that we're, getting out of the mask and COVID issues, and then move forward and try and get it out there.
But I like Ms. Kwok's suggestion. I mean, I think maybe we should revisit that survey. Just let's make sure that there's no assumptions in there. So
instructors, we have quality educators, quality education, that we could get that probably quality education in that 45 minutes, an hour or whatnot. So I think, and sometimes, and Ms. Train probably could chime in here, sometimes in 90 minutes, the kids get that fatigue, and it's hard. And so, and other times they're very engaged, a great instructor, they want to be there for an hour and a half. They want to be there.
and I think the input from our staff is very important as well,
Yeah,
so
100%.
it's
We don't wanna burn them
about,
out.
it's about surveying our staff as well and understanding what their concerns are and what their priorities are. And what would they put as, their top values in terms of thinking about how they may have to use time differently. And I think, again, you're going to have to pull that all together and see where things align, and this is a very challenging issue. There's a lot of pros, but there also has to be some give and take and some compromise. Everybody can't have the ideal schedule that they want. Unfortunately, time is finite and, there are logistical issues. So, people have to be willing also to give and take a little bit as well. And I think people will be. But again, it goes back to that education piece and talking things through a little bit more, continuing to raise people's awareness. And, hopefully, we're going to now, be able to, some other things that have been taking, people's time and attention away, that we can give this the focus. It's a big decision. It's a long-term decision. And, we want to make sure that the other big piece of this too that we want to keep in mind is worked with us on the development of the survey, that they are also expert at doing the analysis. Done many districts, and so we've spoken to districts where they did their surveys on this particular topic, and they actually have a team that looked at it. I think that will be extremely helpful. They'd be looking at it with an objective eye. They would really be reporting to all of you, what rose to the top as concerns, what people are willing to live with, where they're willing to compromise, where they're not. So, I think it's really valuable for us to have them as a consulting partner on this, given the importance of the issue. And they would certainly be, that's part of what we've tasked them with, is not just the creation of the survey, but then with your, expertise in this, look at our data, put it together for us, present it, and, give us your take on what our community is saying about this issue.
So I think we need to start doing that because it's now, it's early March still, but we're in March. And if we don't know, the community, we're getting people calling us and emailing us and coming to board meetings and saying that they want this. And if we are serious, which we have been discussing this, if we're going to put this into effect for the fall, we need to get a move on because we have to give our staff time to prepare. So I think we need to either get that survey out or we're going to lose all money. I think that's kind of time.
I'd also like people that we're hearing one side of the very well-informed who have been following this topic for a long time. I don't know what the broad community will say. It could be, because remember, this is over 100 years of pedagogy, and we would be almost moving in. There's a limited number of school districts in our area. We would be the first in our North Bergen area to do something like this. So there is some natural hesitation because you're talking about developments children's time. You don't, this is not a time to make a change and then go back to it because you've lost a whole year or so of growth. So that's why it has been a measured and deliberate process. I think our children are too important for them to be experimented upon. This is an important topic. Everything needs to be really thought through with the community buy-in. It has to have the community buy-in. I'm curious to know what happens in California when a whole district, a whole state is mandated. It's different from what we're charged with, which is why all these different options are where it's almost like a surplus of options with some real constraints. So I think it is important to understand really what the broad community, staff, not just the parents, the staff, I mean, they are going to be implementing this. So the staff, the parents, the students, broad residents who may see a different traffic pattern emerge and suddenly be like, wait, what's happening here? So I would urge the committee to, just as a fact-basing tool, not as like a decision, this is it, this is what's coming.
Could be within that. You've grounded it, and then you along the way, we're going to be doing the survey, and we're going to do the survey at X point. So, but people, because you hear a lot of things. Why aren't parents better and get their kids to bed early? Why don't you just tell your child to go to sleep? Well, that's not really understanding this whole circadian rhythm and why it's important. So I do really think you've got to start there, and I think we haven't done as much as we can in that. Then the survey follows. But with the survey, then comes the work of designing what this looks like, and then what are the costs involved. And that's just the reality. So,
yeah, but at the same time,
and you have to, but I come back to, is this something that we all value? And therefore, should we put the effort in? And if money has to be spent on a consultant for focus groups or whatever, are we willing to go that route?
We've already approved $20,000 for the consultant. So I think that we need to try and utilize and make the most of that investment. I understand what you're saying, but I feel that we're at a point where we've talked amongst ourselves. We've heard feedback from a very motivated, very informed segment of the community. The broader community does need to be educated. We can do that in parallel. And one of the tools to educate that this is something that we are contemplating would be a survey.
Yes.
I do believe that. I feel like if we
I don't have any problem with the survey. is just how you look at this timeline and when's the best time to do
I
that
personally don't
survey.
even know, I don't know what else we're gonna gain by a couple more weeks of education personally. I mean, I think if when you get that survey, if you're a parent that knows about late start and wants it, that should get reflected in the survey results, right? If this is a professional organization that knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
If you've never heard of late start and you don't care, then that's your preference. You know what I mean? And that's gonna get reflected in the survey as well. So I feel like if you're a parent, you have an opinion one way or another, or you just don't know and you don't care, then that's the answer. And you maybe logistics is more important for you than late start. Maybe you don't want to have an earlier elementary school time. Maybe you don't want to have kids coming to school later because you have work, et cetera, like Ms. Clark came up. So I think that the feelings are going to come out on the survey. I don't know what education is going to do. And then I think also the risk you have with educating is, are you pushing one agenda only? Right. You're gonna have parents that are gonna be upset with that too.
But speaking of what you're doing though, you're actually doing it. It's not just late start, it's alternative schedules. So and that's exactly that's the problem. We're talking about just late start, but it also can affect the schedules and maybe how rotations are going, and it could affect how long class sizes are. So it's exactly that. So that proves the point you're saying.
Yeah, we just don't know the trade-offs, and I think the survey could help inform the committee on what the trade-offs, what the most important trade-offs are, what are some very, very difficult hurdles that will never be overcome. I mean, we've heard some of the resistance to the 90-minute idea, but I don't know, maybe there's
I
a
also
segment
think
that said,
that
I'll
I'm
take the
not
90
sure how well
Yeah.
informed parents are about the sleep research as it pertains to teens. And if I am a parent who hasn't really heard it before, right, I'm certainly probably going to answer that survey differently than if I come to a presentation, learn about the sleep research, how our teens are being impacted. Now I've got new information that may cause me to react differently to some of the questions. You know, I'm not sure what percentage of people are really aware or understand that this body of research out here about, teen sleep is in place. So if you put the survey out too soon without at least putting that research in front of parents in a more, go way, or, we've created the section on the website. I don't know how many people have looked at it.
But if we're ready to do the survey in December, we've now had 3 more months to talk about it. So I feel like, I think that
Just to put in perspective, California, the whole state, they surveyed in 2011.
Yeah.
So-
right.
So.
Yeah, we are
What
still
if
doing
we-
this. I know people have been talking about this topic
Yes,
for a long time, but
So
in
Stacy- It's not
earnest,
easy.
with
It's not
even trying to do this in a year
Yes.
is a challenge.
Yeah.
I know that I really appreciate the advocacy groups and the research that's been brought to the table, and it has been discussed, at the high school level for, my understanding, a good number of years now. However, the real digging into the actual change to a schedule for the entire district really just began in the latter part of the pandemic last year. And if we look at, other districts that have gone down this road, it has been a multi-year process, and with everything that has been happening, with COVID and this really like topsy-turvy couple of years that we've had, that's added a second level of challenge to this very short timeline. And so I think we have to think about that as well, not only for our parents and our students, but also for our staff. So
Stacy, what if we, as part of the survey, included a section as supplemental information? Here's the American Pediatric Association, whatever, link on later start. Here's some article information. Here is more information about instructional time. What does a 90-minute schedule really look like? What is an 80-minute schedule? Let's put a couple of links in there, because no matter how many webinars and things you do, most parents don't attend that. Right. To be real, right? So you could spend years doing those webinars and parents are still going to say, until there's a survey and there's something in their face, they're gonna say, what are you talking about? I never heard of this.
Well, the links,
So maybe we
built
just
into
include
the
it all together.
survey are the links to our website that we've created just on this alone, the link to the presentation that was done the night of December 1st. So if people are, want to go back and look at what we've kind of gathered on that, the links are right there in the survey. So, I think that's a really valid point. And you're like, people don't really think about it till the question's in front of them. They're like, oh, let me take a minute and then look at this a little bit more deeply. So, K-12 Insight, again, also with right in line with that idea.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, is that there were so many challenges that the administration and all of us had to to deal with, that this may feel like it has been delayed, but it doesn't mean that the committees and the admins have not been aware of it. So I do bet, I do ask for the public to be patient. It's been very deliberative, and it should be, because we are a large district. So unlike some other districts that may have been able to, in other states that may have been able to implement it, we have over 5,700 students and 900 employees. The numbers are magnified, and the impact will be magnified. So thank you for being so thoughtful about it. I know it's not easy. There are a lot of constraints. And once again, I think that it's where I feel like, I think I heard this in December. I think we're at a point where we're just talking amongst ourselves, and we've heard some thoughts. Well, do they represent the whole community? And can we just put something out there so we understand what would the public be willing to take? What kind of compromises? What kind of hard no's? I don't know how you move forward without something other than, based on 5 people who came. It really does have to be a broad community.
Thank you all for your hard work on this.
Thank you.
It is a complex topic that's not easy. I think everybody would agree it's not an easy one. There are sacrifices that are going to have to be made, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you very much.
I have a couple other
Yeah.
things for discussion. At the last meeting, I talked about trying to gather some information on for advocacy in terms of legislation that might hamper effective hiring and our students. And there might have been some confusion about the role. So this is from a recent, I just have enough for the board. It's from a recent New Jersey School Board magazine on the role of the board to be advocates, particularly with the legislation. So I just wanted to be clear about that, since I had gotten an email. It seemed there was some confusion about that. And then, Tom, I just wanted to follow up, were you able to get any samples for Board of Education members being able to remotely come into a meeting?
I have a meeting with Strauss Esme tomorrow, and they
Oh.
were giving me some information, so
Oh, great.
I'll be following up with everybody.
Great. And then I just wanted to know where we are with FKA. Thank you for getting all that information about the wood shop. And where is that going and where are we on it?
We got the second proposal from them, so we have two options, and now we'll have to go back to, I guess, to the facilities committee, and actually maybe both, facilities and finance, to talk about this a little bit more.
Yeah. Because one option doesn't appear to really clean the air or allow you to use all the machines at the same time. So there really seems to be some drawbacks on the interior one, but just wanted to know where that was going.
So I think Tom will discuss more in the facilities committee, but I don't think they've provided all the three options we asked them to. We asked them to provide, so there was an option just to go an external one big system, and then now they've provided an internal system. So is that in addition to what we already have, what they're proposing? This will be I'll take an example of if I have to heat about or condition a large building, and this will be suctioning the dust. It's not always just one size, one large equipment. Can't we have an additional equipment in addition to what we already have?
I could talk to the architect about that.
Right, I think we asked them for that option, that we have an undersized system right now. So the current system does not connect all the machines in the wood shop. So either those machines were added later, or the original system was designed undersized. So if we have a system that is designed to work for X number of machines, and now we have X plus Y, so can we put another system that's just for those extra machines? Like why does it have to be either a big external system for all of them completely replaced, or a big internal system which will take 14 feet? Can we have an additional, like two equipments? Why does it have to be one large equipment?
We'll talk to FK about that.
Thank you.
I know one of the questions I think you're going to get from Strauss Esme is one was about remote for Board of Ed members. I don't know how the voting goes. And the second thing was policy to prohibit use of personal email addresses for board business. So from both policy matters, we should get some clarity on that. Okay, anybody else? No? Okay, moving on to acceptance of minutes. I would like to table January 31st. I did not get a chance to review it. So it would just be for February 14th. Okay.
I move February 14th.
I second.
All in favor, right?
Yeah. Aye. So January 31st will be for the next meeting. Thank you. Other business? No. Okay, great. And now we're on to the second portion of the public comments. Same 4-minute time limit. If there's nobody on the in person, we'll go to callers in remotely. Okay. Ms. Loving, Mr. and Mrs. Loving, you're on with the board. Please unmute your microphone.
Good evening. Good evening. This is Ann Loving, 342 South Irving Street. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
First of all, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to call in. As always, I'm so appreciative that the Board of Ed allows for remote dial-ins. This past week, in 2 different newspapers, as well as in an online newspaper, I read that the School Ethics Committee has recommended censure for 2 members of the Board of Ed, one who is a sitting member and another who is a former member. they were cited for failure to follow board procedures about what can be said about legal matters in public. In the articles that I read, Dr. Gorman is quoted as saying that the ruling is being appealed for the sitting member of the board. I absolutely respect the right to appeal, but I wonder who is paying the legal fees, because I don't see why the taxpayers should have to pay for this. So I know that you're not probably in a position to answer this question, but I wanted to bring that point up. It's a concern of mine. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Weber, you're on with the board. Please unmute your microphone.
I don't think I'm muted. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Great. Thank you. Lori Weber, 235 South Irving Street. And I actually logged on just to say that a large portion of the board discussion on late start was not audible to the public. I don't know if you have recordings independent of what viewers can hear, but if you do, I would urge you to do more accurate more detailed than usual minutes, because most of it was gone. For some reason, it kicked right back in after that discussion ended. Secondly, in regard to the comments by Mrs. Loving just before me, I mean, as the person who filed those complaints, I would like to first of all point out that the reporting done by North Jersey and then picked up by a really horrible blog site was not only premature, but it was inaccurate reporting. I tried to reach out to the reporter to correct it, but she has declined to respond to me. Interestingly, she said that she reached out to me for comment. She did not. Had she, I would have given her an accurate depiction and urged her to not report until the matter had run its course. What most people don't understand is that what Ms. Stoltz reported is, again, not accurate, that the process is not complete, that the parties involved are entitled to a full process, which includes the appeal portion of the process. And I think that the integrity of the process is what is important. Indeed, to deny those people the opportunity as board or former board members at taxpayer expense is to deny the entire process that allows people, like residents like myself, to file the complaints in the first place, which also costs money, just like public defenders cost money, but we don't want to leave anyone without proper representation. So I find the prior comments by my neighbor down the street to be uninformed and not appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, there's no speakers on the phone or present, so I'm going to close a second public commenting period. We were in executive session, so I'm going to skip that. Okay. Thank you for all those who've been following to the end. I hereby move that this meeting of the Ridgewood Board of Education be
Actually,
adjourned.
Ms.
Yeah, yes.
Kwok, maybe you could give a 30-second summary of what we talked about for the late start, if they said nobody heard anything.
Oh,
Just
right.
maybe the action plan, so.
Okay.
in case people missed it.
Okay, so we had a robust discussion on late start and where we are, which is that there was a pause in terms of sending out a survey in December, given the timing of it and given just navigating through the pandemic, to be frank. The administration has been working really hard on moving this process along. There was a lot of comments by a very, very well-informed, very motivated segment. And now we felt like it was at a point where perhaps a survey could be sent out as a fact gathering tool, not as a vote for any particular plan, but this can help guide how the late start looks like from an implementation point of view, because we don't have real input from the broader community, from the parents, from the staff, from the students, and from the community at large. So the feeling was that in conjunction with the educational component that includes having Dr. Owens come and speak about the importance of the circadian rhythm and sleep at the same time, so that we're not delayed, we would send out a fact-based survey that would just lay out and understand, so that we as a board and as a committee understand what are the real trade-offs that maybe need to happen. So that's where we were, that the survey, that one that was ready to be implemented in December will now be refreshed and updated based on some of the more recent feedbacks, and that we would share it. I think you'd share it as a board. You'd meet with the committee first, the broader alternative schedule committee to fashion it. And then at some point, it will be hopefully soon, it will be sent out with ample time for the responses to be gathered. With the caveat, once again, this is not a vote. This is simply tell us your thoughts so that it will help inform what the plans could look like. That's it. Thank you. Okay, I hereby move that this meeting of the Ridgewood Board of Education be adjourned. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.